Chapter 1457 Fiery Locust Swarms Response. Chapter 1457 Fiery Locust Swarms Response 1457 Fiery Locust Swarms Response, Miss Walker. There's been an emergency. A servant urgently knocked on Fiery Queen's bedroom door. The door opened a few moments later, and Fiery Queen stepped out of the room in her pajamas. What the hell is going on? She muttered in an irritated voice. The Demon Sealing faction has just issued a challenge to the Fiery Locust Swarm. The servant stammered, his words heavy with the news. Demon Sealing faction? Fiery Queen did not immediately recognize the name and wore a puzzled look on her face. The Demon Sealing faction is the one founded by player Yuan. The servant elaborated. What? Player Yuan? Fiery Queen instantly recognized his name and almost choked on her saliva from shock. He challenged the Fiery Locust Swarm to a faction war? Why would he suddenly do this? Fiery Queen suddenly recalled that Yuan's little sister was part of by Lianhua's faction. That little bitch must have cried to her brother about it. Wait a minute. Fiery Queen's anxiousness abruptly disappeared when she realized another thing. How many members does the Demon Sealing faction have, again? Last I checked, they only had 11 members, she asked the servant, who quickly pulled out his phone and started typing. According to the database, they only have 12 members. Only 12 members? Fiery Queen held a dumbfounded look on her face after hearing this information. After a moment of silence, she burst out laughing, ha ha ha. 12. They're challenging the Fiery Locust Swarm with just 12 people? They must be out of their damn minds. Fuck, I was actually worried for a second there because of player Yuan. This is actually great news since there's no way they could defeat the Fiery Locust Swarm in a faction war. Even if player Yuan's cultivation is at Spirit King, it won't help him defeat 1,000 people, much less 40,000, and he will surely make a mistake and get himself disqualified. Fiery Queen clenched her fists in excitement at this chance to defeat player Yuan once and for all. Call Su Boqin for me, she said to her servant. After dialing Su Boqin's number, the servant handed his phone to her. Hello? Who's this? It's me. Miss Walker. I was expecting your call. You must be calling because of the Demon Sealing faction's challenge request to us. Yes, that's right. Just in case, what are the terms? Did they impose any limits? Well, they want to do siege mode with no player or cultivation limitation. They are also allowing martial techniques. Ha ha ha. No limitations? Are they insane? Have they even been keeping up to date with the rest of the world, or do they spend all of their time in? Do they truly believe they can defeat 40,000 players with just 12 in siege mode? Fiery Queen was not laughing alone at this moment. Countless people around the world were laughing at the Demon Sealing faction's seemingly foolish decision after seeing the terms, filling the internet with mockery. No player or cultivation limitation? Is the Demon Sealing faction that arrogant? Or are they simply insane? Do they realize that they'll have to defend their castle against 40,000 players with just 12? Honestly, they probably don't even know the rules since this is their first time participating in a faction war. But why pick the Fiery Locust Swarm, a top 100 faction, as their first target? Are they on bad terms with each other or something? They are probably doing this just for attention because they've become irrelevant. Or they're being paid. It's their own fault for losing relevance. Not only do they seem to have no intention of increasing their members, but they also don't participate in anything. Why did they even create the faction in the first place? Despite Yuan's popularity, few stood by him or defended his decision. In fact, some outright lost all respect for him, openly criticizing his choices. What a fucking arrogant bastard. He thinks he's invincible or something just because he got lucky in cultivation online. I cannot wait to see them being obliterated during the faction war. Get them good, Fiery Locust Swarm. Put them in their place. Su Boqin, I want you to accept their challenge. Fiery Queen said shortly after learning of the terms. Are you sure? What about the eternal lotuses? Forget about them. I am only messing with them because I cannot directly mess with player Yuan, and they're obviously supporting him. How about the faction war? Even though there are no player limitations, we should still set some limits to avoid being ridiculed for using a sledgehammer to crack open an egg. Who cares if you're ridiculed? Send everyone. I want you to completely and utterly destroy player Yuan and his faction. And it's better to be safe than sorry. Who knows what that tricky bastard has up his sleeves? What about the payment? Will you still pay us the rest of the money even though we won't be fighting eternal lotuses? Of course, I will still honor the rest of the payment. In fact, I will increase the payment depending on how much you humiliate them. The more satisfied I am, the more money I'm willing to give you. Ha ha ha. This is great. Thank you, Miss Walker. You will not be disappointed. Chu Shijian laughed out loud. Then I will immediately respond to their challenge and accept it. Very well. Keep me updated. Of course. After hanging up, Chu Shijian accepted the Demon Sealing Faction's challenge request. Ding. Fiery Locust Swarm has accepted your challenge. Please wait for your match to be scheduled. Mei Feng smiled when she saw this notification. Chairman Li had been staring at his screen since he sent out the challenge request, so he immediately saw the Fiery Locust Swarm's response. He swiftly picked up the phone and called Yuan to relay the news. Yes, they have responded and accepted your challenge. Of course, I will immediately schedule your match and call you back when I have a date. No, thank you. Chairman Li hung up and started working on his computer again. Chapter 1458 in 3 days. Chapter 1458 in 3 days. 1458 in 3 days. Although Chairman Li could have scheduled the Demon Sealing Faction's faction war the next day, he wanted to give everyone a chance to prepare, so he scheduled the match to begin in 3 days. After pushing back a month's worth of scheduled faction wars, Chairman Li confirmed the match schedule and called Yuan to notify him of the news. Yes, the match will start at noon on the Great Battlefield in 3 days. I can guide you if you don't know how to get there. If we travel by plane, it's about 8 hours away from the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Thank you for the offer, but I already have people guiding me there, said Yuan. I understand. Then, good night. After hanging up, Yuan called Mei Feng to notify her of the faction war. Yes, the Fiery Locust Swarm has accepted our challenge, and our match is scheduled to begin in 3 days at noon. Do you know how to get to the Great Battlefield? Yes, I do. Then can you bring the others there? I will meet you guys there. Of course. Well, see you there. Yuan hung up the phone, turned to look at Lianhua, and said, now that that's settled, let's get some rest tonight and start our training tomorrow. Okay, I'll get you a arrow. Before Lianhua could finish her sentence, Yu stood up and declared, brother will sleep with me. My bed is big enough to fit 2 people comfortably, too. Yuan looked at her with a bittersweet smile. Aren't you an independent adult now? That has nothing to do with us sleeping together like before. You owe me, at the very least, this much for not visiting me sooner. Yuan sighed in a defeated voice. All right, we can sleep together. Good night, senior sister. Good night, Lianhua, Yuan said to her before following Yu to her room. They quickly lay in bed inside Yu's room but did not immediately go to sleep. Brother, what do you think's going to happen to our world? I can't say nothing will happen since we're already past that point, and there will surely be more changes in the future, but I will do my best to protect it from being harmed by foreign or domestic forces. I know that you're trying to protect the world, but please take care of yourself. You're much more important to the world for me, and if I had to choose to sacrifice one, I wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice the world if it means keeping you safe. Yu spoke in a low voice. Yuan smiled, I will do my best. They fell asleep shortly after while holding hands. Early in the morning the following day, Lianhua gathered every member in her faction, which numbered in the thousands, at the training grounds. Once everyone gathered, Lianhua began speaking. I'm sure most if not all of you heard this by now, that our opponent, Fiery Locust Swarm, has been challenged by the Demon Sealing faction. If you're wondering why they would do something like that, you can ask the person who challenged the fiery locust swarm himself, as he will be training with us for the next several days. What? Did this happen last night? Player Yuan is here? I knew my eyes weren't playing tricks on me and that I saw him yesterday. Where is Player Yuan right now? A stir of commotion rippled through the crowd. He should be arriving at any moment. I'm here. Yuan's voice suddenly resounded, causing everyone there to turn their heads to stare at him like a group of seagulls before food. Seeing how much attention he was getting from females, Yu, who was beside him, frowned slightly. It's really Player Yuan. You're my idol, Player Yuan. Are you really going to train with us? Yuan jumped onto one of the stages there and started answering their questions. Please, just call me Yuan. Yes, I will be training with you guys to prepare for the upcoming faction war with the fiery locust swarm. Why did you challenge the fiery locust swarm? Did you do it to help us? Someone raised a hand and asked. As a friend of Lianhua, I cannot sit still when her beloved faction is being bullied. Not to mention that my precious little sister is also part of the faction. However, I am not doing this for a noble cause, so I don't deserve any gratitude you may feel toward me. How confident are you in defeating the fiery locust swarm? I saw the terms, and it doesn't play to your advantage. Someone else expressed their worry. Yuan smiled and said, I won't say that victory is guaranteed, but I am confident in our abilities. Isn't this the demon sealing faction's first time participating in a faction war? How can you be confident in something you've never experienced? While I may not have any experience in faction wars, I certainly know a thing or two about fighting a large number of opponents at once. Sometime later, after answering several more questions, Yuan said, anyways, let's talk about our training now. For training, I am going to be sparring with everyone here, but we're going to treat it as though we are in a faction war, such as representing our life with a badge by the waist. Everyone here will have exactly 30 seconds to take my life. If you successfully do so, I will reward you a divine rank technique. What? Everyone there expressed immense shock after hearing his words. Also, I won't use any techniques, and I won't attack you for the first 30 seconds. Once I start attacking, if you are able to keep your life for 10 seconds, I will reward you with a divine rank technique, so you'll have 2 chances to receive the reward. What? They cried out loud again, are you serious? You won't go back on your words, right? Yuan chuckled and said, I promise you that I am serious. Yuro nodded, I vouch for my brother's integrity. Me too. Lianhua also chimed in. Hearing this, the others cheered loudly, causing the place to tremble with their volume alone. Chapter 1459 Training with Eternal Lotuses. Chapter 1459 Training with Eternal Lotuses. 1459 Training with Eternal Lotuses. After the announcement, members of the Eternal Lotuses started going onto the stage to spar with Yuan. You are free to use any martial technique you want, and don't hold back, Yuan said to the short young lady standing a few meters in front of him. You may begin whenever you are ready. A few seconds later, the young lady flew forward and started swinging her sword at Yuan without reservation, her eyes as fierce as a tiger's as she unleashed her most powerful martial technique. The young lady was a 7th level spirit warrior, so even her most powerful attack posed no threat to Yuan, who easily dodged it. As he continued dodging her attacks, Yuan lectured her about the mistakes in her movements and swordsmanship and even told her the method for fixing them. 30 seconds passed in the blink of an eye for the spectators and the fighters on the stage, and Yuan announced, I will be aiming for your life now. He raised his wooden training sword and closed their distance in an instant. Wah! Before the young lady could even react, Yuan stabbed his sword directly at the wooden badge hanging around her waist, destroying it. In less than a second, Yuan had taken her life. This greatly shocked the spectators, as none of them were able to follow Yuan's movements when he attacked. Wow! Did anyone see what just happened? Even though I stared at him without blinking, I couldn't see his movement until after had destroyed her badge. It's as though he stopped time or something. Did he use a technique, or is he simply just that fast? Next. Yuan ignored the side comments and called for the next challenger. Since the Eternal Lotuses had around 5,000 members, he had very little time to spare if he wanted to spar with everyone there before the faction war. Time passed quickly, and an entire day had passed before anyone realized it. Yuan continuously sparred with the members there without any breaks from day to night. After hundreds of matches, nobody could destroy Yuan's badge, and nobody there could last more than 5 seconds when Yuan started attacking. I will stay on this stage until nobody is willing to challenge me, or I have to leave for the faction war, Yuan declared, dumbfounding the members there. However, they also saw this as a chance. They thought that if Yuan continued sparring with them, he would eventually get tired and make mistakes. Thus, the Eternal Lotuses continued sparring with Yuan throughout the entire night. Sometime in the afternoon on the second day, the Eternal Lotuses members noticed Yuan's movements getting slower. He also wasn't instantly destroying their badges. Yes. He must be getting tired. It's only a matter of time before he's exhausted and makes a mistake. The girls clenched their fists in excitement, and their motivation to defeat him peaked. Yuan continued to grow increasingly slower and more sluggish with his movements throughout the day. Yet, nobody was close to destroying his badge or lasting more than 10 seconds during his offense. How come we're unable to defeat him even though he's clearly exhausted? Is he really exhausted, though? What if he's just messing with us? No way, but he's been fighting thousands of matches without any rest. Even a spirit lord would get tired. Suddenly, a familiar face entered the stage to face Yuan. It's my turn, brother Yuan. Yu Rou greeted him with a smile. Yuan smiled back and said, let me see how much you've grown. Just like in Cultivation Online, Yu Rou's choice of weapon was the fan. You know, one of the Demon's Sealing faction members also wields the fan, Yuan said. Omicron M. Oh, really? Yes. If he participates in the faction war, you'll be able to see him fight. Maybe you'll even learn a thing or two. I can't wait. Not wanting to let Yuan rest for another second, Yu Rou suddenly used a movement technique to close their distance. Your movements aren't bad, but they could be better, sharper. Yuan said as he turned his head around to face Yu Rou, who was already swinging her fan at his face. However, halfway into her strike, Yu Rou activated her movement technique again. I've got you now. Yu Rou smiled inwardly when Yuan didn't follow her movements a second time and was still staring at her previous location. However, right as her fan was able to smack him in the back of the head, Yuan casually moved his arm to block the incoming strike with a single finger. Wah! Yuan's eyes shifted to stare at her, emitting an intense pressure. Sensing his gaze, Yu Rou's entire body trembled, and without hesitation, she jumped back to distance herself from him. Not bad, Yu Rou. If you hadn't backed away just now, I would have taken your life. Yuan smiled and continued, also, you're the first one to aim for my head instead of my badge, and that strike contained enough strength to break someone's skull. Can you blame me? You did tell us not to hold back, she responded with a stiff smile. You're right, and I am not blaming you. Come, you've got another 15 seconds left. He beckoned her with the finger he used to block her strike. Yu Rou nodded and quickly approached him again. 15 seconds passed, but Yu Rou was unable to break his badge. My turn now. Yuan used his movement technique for the first time, disappearing into thin air like a ghost. Wah! Where did he go? Yu Rou was left baffled by his disappearance. A split second later, she sensed a weird sensation coming from her waist, causing her to look down. That was when she realized her badge had been destroyed. Wow! I thought he would go easy on her because she's his little sister, but he took her life in less than a second. The spectators were amazed by Yuan's movement technique, which allowed him to get behind Yu Rou like a ghost. I knew you were acting tired, brother. Yu Rou turned around to look at him with a bittersweet smile. Yuan chuckled, you guys were starting to slack off, so I had to motivate you guys again. The next person to enter the stage was another familiar face. I don't care about the divine rank technique, so let's have a proper spar without the 30-second time limit. Bai Lianhua said as she stepped onto the stage. Yuan nodded, sure. Chapter 1460 Sparring with Lianhua. Chapter 1460 Sparring with Lianhua. 1460 Sparring with Lianhua. Whenever you are ready, Yuan said as he casually stood on the stage with a calm smile on his face. Lianhua readied her sword and took a deep breath before dashing at Yuan at full speed. Ha! Lianhua began their confrontation with a quick sword thrust that aimed straight at the spot between Yuan's eyebrows. She expected Yuan to easily dodge her strike, and he did, so without delay, she immediately raised her right leg to kick his waist, aiming for his badge. However, right as her feet reached his badge, Yuan's hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed onto her leg. Seeing that she had been caught, Lianhua hastily pulled her feet back but quickly realized that she did not have the strength to break out of Yuan's hold. Yet, she did not panic and swung her sword at his face for a second time. However, she was forced to stop mid-swing when Yuan abruptly lifted her into the air and swung her around like a cowboy with a rope. "Wa? Yuan?" Lianhua cried out loud. A few more circles later, Yuan tossed her to the other side of the stage. After barely landing on her feet, Lianhua looked at Yuan with wide eyes, seemingly in disbelief about what had just transpired. The spectators also couldn't believe their eyes. "Yuan, can you treat our fight more seriously?" Lianhua asked with a sigh. But I am," he said with a nonchalant expression. Lianhua was speechless. After a moment of silence, she clenched her sword and charged at him again. This time, she kept her distance and used a martial technique. Illusion Sword Arts. Lianhua propelled her sword in a stabbing motion, aimed at Yuan's forehead again. However, from the spectator's view, there were several swords flying at Yuan, almost as though Lianhua grew a few extra arms. There it is. Senior sister's illusion sword art. Wow! She's managed to create 7 illusions. Yuan raised an eyebrow at the crowd's mumbling. 7 illusions? What are they talking about? He wondered inwardly, as he couldn't see any illusions. Once Lianhua's sword almost reached him, Yuan casually swung his sword, deflecting the strike. He saw through it so easily. As expected of Yuan, not even senior sister can fool him. Unbeknownst to them, Yuan's soul strength was so high that Lianhua's illusion sword arts were completely ineffective against him. In fact, Yuan thought he had to defend against invisible attacks. Lianhua sucked her teeth after seeing how easily Yuan had blocked one of her stronger techniques. "Okay, let's fight for real now." Lianhua released her cultivation base, filling the headquarters with the aura of a peak spirit lord. Yuan nodded and also released his cultivation. Even though he was only a peak spirit grandmaster, the aura and pressure he exuded were far superior to Lianhua's, who was an entire realm higher. The spectators subconsciously distanced themselves from the stage. "Here I come." Lianhua warned as she flew at him, unleashing a series of powerful sword techniques. Yuan did not back away, even approaching her as he blocked and deflected all of her strikes with ordinary sword swings. However, since his wooden sword could not handle Lianhua's spiritual energy alone, he had to cover it with his own energy. Over the next several minutes, Lianhua showcased all of her techniques and experience without holding anything back. On the other hand, Yuan only casually swung his sword without any techniques. However, his thousands of years of experience in combat was overwhelming and as clear as day even to the inexperienced. Several more minutes later, using nothing but ordinary sword techniques, Yuan cornered Lianhua and made her feel completely hopeless. "It's your win." Lianhua dropped her sword and forfeited. Yuan lowered his sword, and both withdrew their cultivation bases. The moment their spiritual energy dispersed, the wooden sword in Lianhua's grasp cracked. Meanwhile, the sword in Yuan's grasp exploded into thousands of tiny fragments. Seeing this, Lianhua sighed, "I couldn't even get you to use a single technique. I am simply too weak." Yuan shook his head and said, "Don't feel bad. Unless you've practiced sword techniques since you were young, you're already very good with the sword at your age. What about you? Does that mean you've been practicing sword techniques even before you were born?" She asked in a joking tone. He smiled. Something like that. He then swept the crowd with a calm gaze and asked, "Does anyone else want to spar? You should get some rest, Yuan. After all, the faction war between Demon Sealing Faction and Fiery Locust Swarm is tomorrow. I will rest as soon as everyone gets their chance to spar with me." After sparring for a few more hours, Yuan spent the rest of the day teaching Yu Rou how to wield her fan properly. "Since when did you learn to use the fan, brother? I thought you only learned to use the sword and dagger." Yu Rou asked him after seeing how perfectly he handled the fan. He casually lied, "I trained with several other weapons during my spare time, such as the fan and spear." In reality, the god of war had complete mastery over every weapon in existence, and Yuan merely remembered how to use them after regaining Tian Xian's memories. Later that night, Yuan left the headquarters of Eternal Lotuses with Yu Rou, by Lianhua, and Xia Jingyi, Yu Rao's friend, who joined the Eternal Lotuses at the same time. "Good luck, Yuan. Give those bastards a good beating. I know you can do it." Sometime later. "It's been a while, Yuan. Sorry, I didn't spar with you. As a zither cultivator, I have a mostly support role, so it would be a waste of time to spar with you," Xia Jingyi said to him as they made their way to the airport. Yuan casually waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I understand your special position. Zither cultivators are not suited for one-on-one until you have a high enough cultivation, after all." Chapter 1461 The Great Battlefield. Chapter 1461 The Great Battlefield 1461 The Great Battlefield. Don't look down on her because she cannot fight one-on-one, brother Yuan. She's an excellent supporter and an even better fighter when it comes to fighting in groups, Yu Rou suddenly said. Her buffs are amazing, and her zither arts allow her to fight multiple people at once. She's the perfect supporter. Bai Lianhua nodded in agreement. Yes, she's a valuable asset to the faction, so much so that many have tried to poach her from us. Yuan smiled and said, I wasn't looking down on her. Xia Jingyi blushed from all their praises and said in a bashful voice, You're giving me too much credit, Yu Rou. Although my zither arts can cover a large area, I lack control, so I am often disqualified for accidentally injuring the opponents too much. That's true for now, but if you keep practicing, you'll eventually reach a level where you can destroy many badges at once from a distance. You'll be unstoppable then. Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, his lips curling into a mysterious smile as he absorbed Yu Rao's words. Xia Jianji shook her head and sighed, that's easier said than done. Attacking several people at once, precisely at that, requires a tremendous amount of spiritual energy and perfect control. That could take decades of practice, and I am not sure I have the talents for it. Have some faith in yourself, Sister Jingyi. You definitely have the talent for it. Eventually, they arrived at the airport. Bai Lianhua, who had a private jet stationed at this airport, entered through the back door with the others. We'll arrive at the great battlefield in 6 hours. Bai Lianhua said as they boarded the jet. Wow, this is my first time flying on a private jet, said Xia Jingyi, who looked around excitedly. Yuan and Yu Rou had their fair share of experience with private jets in the Yu family, especially Yuan, who used it the most to travel around the world for his music concerts. Sometime later, the plane started moving and quickly ascended into the clouds. The spiritual energy in the sky is much cleaner and denser than it is on the ground, so you should use this opportunity to improve your cultivation. Bai Lianhua said to Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi. Yes. Unfortunately for Yuan and Bai Lianhua, their cultivation was simply too high for Earth, so they could only efficiently cultivate through treasures from the 9 heavens. Bai Lianhua retrieved several spirit stones and offered a few to Yuan, saying, Do you want some? Yuan shook his head with a smile, Thank you, but I would need millions of spirit stones to increase even a single level. That much? Bai Lianhua's eyes widened with shock. But you're only a spirit grandmaster. Even I don't need that many spirit stones to break through as a spirit lord. My boat is a little unique. I don't doubt that. Bai Lianhua chuckled. Go ahead and cultivate without me. It'll give you a little boost. Yuan suddenly said. Huh? What do you mean? Bai Lianhua looked at him with raised eyebrows in a questioning manner. Yuan retrieved the soul-ensnaring zither and replied, "You will find out in a moment. Just start cultivating." Bai Lianhua nodded and closed her eyes to cultivate. A few minutes later, once Bai Lianhua was absorbed in her cultivation, Yuan looked at his zither and took a deep breath before playing it. When Bai Lianhua heard the music, she found herself oddly more relaxed and comfortable instead of being distracted by it, allowing her to concentrate even better than before. It's much easier cultivating. Bai Lianhua quickly realized the effects of Yuan's profound music. Yu Rou and Xia Jingyi were also shocked by this realization. To increase one's cultivation speed through music, he's truly on a different level. Xia Jingyi was left in awe. Yuan played the zither non-stop for the entire 6-hour flight, greatly assisting the others' cultivation. Xia Jingyi even experienced a breakthrough, entering the 9th level of Spirit Master. Thank you, Yuan. I was able to break through much sooner than expected because of your music, she thanked him after the jet landed. I didn't even know improving another's cultivation speed with zither art was possible. You've opened my eyes again. Bai Lianhua said. Do you think you can teach Sister Jingyi? Yu Rou asked. I don't think that's necessary. Xia Jingyi quickly said. However, Yuan shook his head and said, even if I want to teach her, this isn't something that can be taught. After all, it isn't as simple as giving her a sheet of musical notes to play with. It's not the song that matters, but how you incorporate your spiritual energy, emotions, and experience into your performance. Emotions and experience? How does one do that? Yu Rou asked out of curiosity. For example, anyone can sing a love song, but those who understand the essence of love and are able to express it through their voice will typically sound better than someone who has never experienced love. When I performed just now, I incorporated my cultivation experience into my zither arts. But there's no need to worry. She will eventually learn it as long as she continues to practice. Wow! I didn't know zither art was so complicated. Sister Jingyi always makes it seem so easy. My respect for you just increased, Sister Jingyi. Sometime later, they deboarded the jet. As he walked down the steps and approached the vehicle parked beside the jet, Yuan used his divine sense to quickly sweep the entire island. The island was massive and resembled a resort. It had an airport, several docks for those traveling by sea, a section that had hundreds of hotels, a marketplace, a food court, and, last but not least, 6 distinct arenas, each for a specific faction war mode. This place is quite crowded, Yuan muttered out loud. That's natural. The great battlefield has millions of unique visitors every day. Bai Lianhua said. Anyway, where are we meeting the others? They haven't arrived yet and should be arriving soon. Let's get some food first, shall we? Okay. Chapter 1462 Fewer than anticipated. Chapter 1462 Fewer than anticipated. 1462 Fewer than anticipated. After leaving the airport, Yuan and the others ventured to the food court, a bustling hub housing over 100 restaurants offering diverse cuisines from around the world. However, before they left the airport, Yuan handed everyone there an appearance-altering pill to hide their identity, as Yuan had learned his lesson several days ago and didn't want to be recognized. Upon arriving at the food court, spent nearly an hour exploring the place before finally settling on a steakhouse. Half an hour into their dining, Yuan received a text message notifying him of her arrival. We have arrived at the great battlefield. Yuan responded with their location. We're currently dining in the food court at Spirit Steakhouse. We will be there shortly. They have landed and will be coming here, Yuan said to the others as they savored the juicy steaks before them. An hour later, Mei Feng showed up with the Demon Sealing faction, at least those who planned on participating in the faction war. By the time Mei Feng showed up, Yuan and the others had already finished eating and were waiting for them outside the restaurant. Of course, he told her about their disguise. This is everyone? Yuan stared at Mei Feng and her group with a raised eyebrow. I'm sorry, young master, but the others haven't logged off. Mei Feng sighed. Yuan silently looked at the members who had followed Mei Feng. There was Wang Bingbing, Shi Lang, and Wu Zhao. 3 people in total. Seriously? You're going to fight the fiery locust swarm with this many people? Bai Lianhua was speechless. Yuan nodded, although this is fewer than I'd anticipated, for is more than enough. If I could, I would even fight them alone. What do you mean for, young master? I am also participating, you know. Mei Feng suddenly said. Huh? You really don't have to, Miss Mei Feng. I don't want you to feel like you need to fight for us. After all, you're already doing enough as our caretaker and manager. Nonsense. If you're worried about me, that I cannot fight, allow me to remind you who taught Mei Xiao how to fight. That's right, it was me. Yuan showed a bittersweet smile and said, that's not it, Miss Mei Feng. I am not doubting your ability in combat. I just thought you wouldn't be interested in something like faction wars. Now, why would you assume that? I have been anticipating the day we participated in one since I started studying about factions. In fact, if you hadn't brought it up, I would have mentioned it sooner or later. Mei Feng responded with a slight smile. Is that so? Yuan was speechless. Anyway, while I said that, I shall take the role of ruler during the faction war since I have the lowest cultivation base among us, she said. Yuan nodded, okay. By the way, we still have some time before the faction war. You should grab some food here before then. It's okay, we ate on the flight here. We should take this time to plan for the faction war. Wang Bingbing said. Plan? Do we really need a plan? Yuan asked. Of course. How else are we going to deal with 40,000 people with just the 5 of us? Yuan then said, I was going to let you guys have some fun before I step in. Let us have some fun. How confident are you in defeating them? I know you're strong enough to kill all of them in a real fight, but we cannot harm them too much in a faction war. Wu Zhao asked. I am aware. Don't worry about winning or how we'll deal with them. Just enjoy your own battle. Mei Feng then said, I have watched all of their previous matches. They won't send all of their members at once and will probably try to drag it out. Why don't we talk elsewhere? Preferably somewhere quieter. Shi Lang said. They left the food court and went to a nearby park. Although the place was also crowded, it wasn't as noisy as the food court. Like I was saying, the fiery locust swarm most likely won't try to finish the faction war too quickly, so they'll send their members slowly. After all, they have plenty of people to spare, and the spectators would crucify them for ending it so soon. Mei Feng said. That makes sense. Yuan nodded and continued, moreover, they're working for Fiery Queen. She'll definitely use this chance to humiliate me as revenge for what I did to her in Cultivation Online. He turned to look at Wang Bingbing and the others and said, just consider this faction war as part of your training. In fact, let's make this into a little game. Excluding me, whoever gets the most kills during the faction war will receive an ancient rank martial technique from me. Wang Bingbing's eyes flickered with excitement after hearing this, and she asked, is that it? No restrictions? He shook his head. Do you have any ancient rank martial techniques for a fan wielder like me? Wu Zhao asked. Of course. What about me? I won't be able to fight as the ruler. Mei Feng said. Yuan smiled and said, if you want any specific technique, just let me know. Do you have any spear techniques? Oh. You've decided to use the spear? She nodded, it was either the spear or the staff since I spent a lot of time wielding a broom and mop. Why you decided your weapon based on that? Yuan looked at her with wide eyes. She merely nodded with a slight smile. Sometime later, Yuan received a phone call from Chairman Li. Have you guys arrived at the Great Battlefield yet? Chairman Li asked. Yes. Can you start making your way to Arena 1? I will give you a quick briefing before the faction war begins. Alright, we will start heading there now. Then I will see you soon. After hanging up, Yuan and the others started making their way to Arena 1, which also happens to be the largest arena on the island. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1463 Faction War Rules. Chapter 1463 Faction War Rules. 1463 Faction War Rules. As Yuan and the others approached Arena 1, they were met with the sight of a sea of people clamoring to enter the arena. Heavens, there are a lot more people today than usual. There are probably millions of people in line, Yuro muttered in a dazed voice when she saw the crowded scene. It's no surprise, and I'd wager that everyone here has come to witness the Demon Sealing Faction's debut, by Lianhua remarked with a calm smile. After taking a moment to scan the scene with his divine sense, Yuan found Chairman Li standing by the second entrance meant for participants. Of course, the 40,000 members of Fiery Locust Swarm were also there, trying to enter the arena. Yuan and the others approached the entrance. Chairman Li noticed Meifeng first due to her maid outfit and beauty. I have been waiting for you. Let's go to your room first, he said to them. Okay. The members of the Fiery Locust Swarm stared at Chairman Li and the others with raised eyebrows. Who are they? How come the chairman of the Cultivators Association is personally greeting them at the entrance? I don't recognize them. Due to Yuan and the other notable identities still being disguised, nobody from the Fiery Locust Swarm recognized them as their upcoming opponent, the Demon Sealing Faction. Once Chairman Li led Yuan and his group inside the arena, the Fiery Locust Swarm quickly stopped thinking about it and resumed talking about their upcoming match. I still cannot believe that the Demon Sealing Faction would challenge us with a mere dozen people. Just what are they thinking? They've probably gone mad from playing too much. I never thought the day I would contribute to Player Yuan's defeat would ever come, but it's so close I can already taste it. Sometime later, Yuan and the others sat down before a long, round table inside a spacious office. I have been wondering this since I saw you guys, but where are the rest? There are only 8 of you. Chairman Li asked. HM? Oh, no, we're not members of the Demon Sealing Faction. Bai Lianhua said, and she proceeded to remove her disguise. You. White Lotus. Yuro and Xiaoxiao also removed their disguise. W8, so there are only 5 members from the Demon Sealing Faction? Are the others okay? Yuan removed his disguise and nodded, yes, they are fine, but they won't be participating in the faction war. Excuse me? Chairman Li stared at him with wide eyes filled with disbelief. He slowly counted the people in the room, excluding those from Eternal Lotuses. After counting 5 of them, he started counting again just in case he miscounted. 5 of you? Are you really planning on fighting the Fiery Locust Swarm with just the 5 of you? Chairman Li found the situation too absurd to believe. Yes. There shouldn't be any problems, right? After all, you technically only need 2 people to participate in the siege mode. There's no problem, but, I know what you're thinking, but have some faith in us. Also, as this will be the Demon Sealing Faction's first appearance, we should make it as shocking as possible. It will definitely be shocking, but unless you defeat the Fiery Locust Swarm, it won't be the good kind. Chairman Li shook his head. Anyways, I won't say anything else on this topic since it won't change anything. Instead, let me brief you about your upcoming faction war. He retrieved several pieces of paper and handed them to the Demon Sealing Faction members. The first page explains the rules of siege mode. First and foremost, you are forbidden from seriously injuring or killing a player. While accidents happen, you will still be held responsible and removed from the faction war. If you purposefully try to seriously harm or kill another player, your faction will automatically be disqualified, which will be considered as a loss, and you will also be forbidden from participating in another match for 4 years. Next, the match will have a 6-hour time limit. If neither faction is able to kill the other's ruler in 6 hours, the faction with the most players alive will be declared the victor. Weapons will be provided to the players, so they are forbidden from bringing their own weapons. In fact, you are prohibited from bringing anything that wasn't provided to you into the match. Hearing this, Yuan asked, is it possible for an individual to bring more than one weapon into the match? Yes, just write down your desired weapons in the weapon request form on the next page. Anyways, continuing with the rules, you are forbidden from using any martial techniques that are considered deadly. Wu Zhao raised his hand and asked, what do you consider to be deadly? If you ask me, any martial technique can be considered deadly if used by the right person. Chairman Li replied, any techniques that attack indiscriminately, cannot be controlled, or always result in serious injuries are considered deadly. Everyone there turned to look at Yuan. All of his martial techniques could be considered deadly since he could easily kill someone with them. Don't worry. In order to use a martial technique in the match, you must acquire approval first so you'll know what you can and cannot use. Before the faction war begins, you may showcase any martial technique that you wish to use during the match before 3 judges. As long as you can prove that you have sufficient control over your technique and that you won't easily injure someone, you should be able to use any technique you want. However, the stronger the martial technique, the stricter the evaluation. Oh, that's good to know. Last rule. You are prohibited from consuming any performance-enhancing drugs before the match. If you are caught doing such a thing, you will be banned from participating in another match for the rest of your life. Chairman Li spoke with a heavy tone. After the system update, there have been many incidents of players consuming performance-enhancing drugs right before their match, giving them an unfair advantage, and it has led to several accidents that resulted in the death of players. However, since their world has yet to discover a reliable method of detecting such things, many players are still abusing such methods to have a higher chance of victory despite the risks. Chapter 1464 A Reliable Method. Chapter 1464 A Reliable Method. 1464 A Reliable Method. Performance-enhancing drugs, huh? Do you think the fiery locust swarm would stoop that low during our match when they already significantly outnumber us? Wang Bingbing asked. I wouldn't put it past them since they are heavily connected with Fiery Queen, who loves to play dirty. Bai Lianhua shrugged. In fact, several of their members have already been caught using performance-enhancing drugs, such as pills that temporarily boost their cultivation base or strength. Suddenly, Yuning's voice resounded inside Yuan's head. I know of a formation that will automatically detect anyone who is under performance-enhancing effects. Oh. That does sound convenient and useful. Although I don't care if my opponents lack integrity, it would be unfair to everyone else who is abiding by the rules. Do you mind creating this formation around the island later? I don't mind. Yuning immediately responded. Thank you. There's no need to thank me. My body and soul already belonged to you the moment you brought me out of the Shadow Realm. We're technically not out of the Shadow Realm yet. It's close enough. By the way, do you know of any formations that could prevent players from seriously injuring or killing each other during the match? I have experienced a few of them for myself. Yuan suddenly asked, recalling his experience in ancient Dragon City. The ones commonly used in tournaments and sparring matches to prevent accidental death, correct? Of course, I know how to make them. I can even make one that can restore limbs, but those require more time and a higher cultivation base than Spirit King. Okay. Yuan cleared his throat and spoke out loud the following moment, Chairman Li, regarding the issue with players using performance-enhancing drugs, I may have a reliable method to detect those under the influence. What? Unable to detain his excitement, Chairman Li stood up and slammed the desk with a shocked look on his face. Is that true? How? Do you know about arrays and formations? I know of a formation that will help us catch these cheaters. If you agree, I can create the formation around this island. If you can really do such a thing, I have no reason to refuse. These cheaters have been a pain in our butt since system update, but we don't know how to reliably detect them. Yuan nodded and said, okay, then I will make the formation. However, I need a few favors from you. Chairman Li swallowed nervously. What is it? 1. You will keep the fact that I created the formation a secret. 2. I will activate the formation once our match with the fiery locust swarm begins, and even if there are players cheating, I want you to let them continue the match. I will create the formation right now if you can do these two things for me. You're going to allow the fiery locust swarm to cheat? Chairman Li was dumbfounded by his bold decision. I won't be able to teach them a lesson if you remove them, after all. He showed a cold smile. Is that so? Chairman Li's entire being trembled. After a moment of silence, he nodded. Okay, we won't remove them, but how will this formation expose these cheaters? You'll find out when I activate the formation. Sometime later, Yuan closed his eyes and allowed Yuning to take over his body again. His cultivation base soared to the peak of Spirit King, and Yuning quickly started filling the room with array symbols. Wow! Wang Bingbing muttered in a dazed voice. Since only Bai Lianhua and Yu Rou were aware of Yuning's existence, nobody else in the room realized that Yuan was currently being possessed by an ancient deity and believed that he was the one in control. Several minutes later, Yuning covered the entire island with the formation and sat down to replenish Yuan's exhausted spiritual energy. I didn't think I would get to experience this amazing feeling again so soon. Yuning thought inwardly as she fully immersed herself in the moment. Once his body regained enough spiritual energy, Yuning returned the control to Yuan. Wei Yuan, when did you reach Spirit King? Shi Lang stared at him with bulging eyes. He shook his head and said, that was just temporary. My real cultivation is still at Spirit Grandmaster. Huh? So that was a technique? No, it's not. I will explain everything later. Chairman Li then asked, so, is it done? Yuan nodded, yes, the formation is completed. I just need to activate it during the match. Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't know how to repay you for this. Chairman Li lowered his head and bowed. Yuan casually waved his hand and said, I don't need any payment since I am not doing this specifically for you. In fact, I also wanted to create a formation that would prevent the players from being seriously injured or killed, but I will have to do this later since I don't have enough time right now. What? Can you say that again? Chairman Li slowly lifted his head to look at Yuan with disbelief. Seeing the confusion in Chairman Li's eyes, Yuan proceeded to explain the formation in more detail. These formations are commonly used in cultivation online to prevent accidents during tournaments and friendly spars. They allow anyone within the formation to use their full power without needing to worry about accidentally killing their opponent. Seriously? How reliable is this formation? Unless the player's cultivation surpasses the creator's cultivation, it's almost impossible for anything to go wrong within the formation. It's certainly safer than whatever you're doing now. Would you like to test it out for yourself? Although Chairman Li was anxious about experiencing something unknown to him, his curiosity made it so that he couldn't refuse. Seeing Chairman Li nod his head in approval, Yuan handed his body to Yuning again. Since the formation would only be large enough to cover the entire room, Yuning didn't have to put much effort or time into it, completing the formation even faster than the last. Chapter 1465 Technique Evaluation. Chapter 1465 Technique Evaluation. 1465 Technique Evaluation. Okay, the formation is completed and activated, Yuan announced after regaining control over his body. Chairman Li and everyone else in the room started looking around, but they were unable to sense anything different in the room. So, how does this formation work? Chairman Li eventually decided to ask. In response, Yuan retrieved a sword, a real steel sword with a sharp blade. This might hurt a little, but bear with me. What are you going to? Before Chairman Li could even finish his sentence, Yuan disappeared from his position and reappeared in front of him like a ghost with the sword positioned, the tip of the blade aimed at his heart. Wait. Chairman Li's body began sweating profusely. Even though he knew that it would not kill him, he couldn't control his instincts and feared for his life. However, Yuan ignored him and shoved his arm, thrusting the sword at his heart. Chairman Li's life flashed before his eyes, and right as the sword reached his body, a layer of spiritual energy suddenly appeared around his body, shielding him from any serious harm. Yet, the sword still managed to strike Chairman Li's body, sending him flying. A moment later, Chairman Li lay on the floor in a sleeping position, his limbs spread out and his face dazed. I am still alive. He slowly reached for his chest and rubbed the area Yuan had struck him. Although it felt like he had truly been stabbed in the heart, he could not feel any wounds on his body. Wait. My clothes. Unfortunately, his clothes did not come out unscathed and had a small slit where Yuan struck. Sorry, but the formation only protects one's body, so your clothes can still be damaged. Chairman Li eventually stood back up with a profound expression on his face. This formation, it will change, revolutionize faction wars. If we don't have to worry about the players accidentally killing each other, we won't have to restrict their weapons and martial techniques, allowing every player to display their true potential. This will make faction wars even more exciting and entertaining. Chairman Li clenched his fists from sheer excitement as he pondered the possibilities. I can change the terrains and make it more risky and dangerous. I can lay natural traps and much more. I cannot wait. Chairman Li wore a wide smile on his face that looked a little sadistic. Quickly snapping out of it, he turned to look at Yuan and asked, how long do you think it'll take to create this formation for the arenas? Also, I won't ask you to do it for free. We will pay for it. Yuan didn't immediately respond since he had to ask Yuning. A moment later, he said, not long, a few minutes for each arena. However, they need to be recharged with spiritual energy every day. You can do so by feeding it with spirit stones. Then can you do it after I speak with the organizers? Since this will change the entire faction war scene, I will need the approval of others. Of course, I cannot imagine it being rejected. It's more of a formality. Yuan nodded, I don't mind. Then I will contact the organizers right now. As for the papers, you just need to write down the weapons you plan on using during the match and sign it. Chairman Li left the room shortly after, leaving them alone. Yuan and the others quickly completed the second page and moved to the third page, which displayed a map of the entire arena for siege mode. Arena 1 stretched across a vast battlefield, spanning 20 miles in both width and length. The opposing castles were positioned in the west and east, approximately 15 miles apart. The terrain was mostly flat, filled with trees and several hills. The map is pretty simple and safe, Mei Feng muttered out loud after looking at the map. I guess they didn't want to risk putting anything that could be dangerous. Wang Bingbing said. Things might change soon, though. Shi Lang chuckled. Chairman Li returned to the room several minutes later. Are you guys done with the papers? He asked them. Yes. Great, then let's bring you guys to get your martial techniques evaluated. As for the organizers of the great battlefield, they all agreed to create the formation, but they wanted to experience it for themselves first and wanted more details about what it would protect the players from. A meeting will be held after your match is concluded. They didn't question you where the formation will come from? Yuan asked with a smile. Of course they did. I simply refused to answer. They will definitely continue to pester me for your identity during the meeting, though. Yuan nodded and said, then I will leave the formation in this room active for now. As for my identity, I can attend the meeting in disguise if you don't mind. That's a great idea. Chairman Li quickly agreed. Sometime later, Chairman Li brought the members of the Demon Sealing faction to a basement underneath the arena. The evaluation is typically done long before a match, but since you have only a dozen people in your faction, we decided to let you do it right before the match. In fact, those who haven't been evaluated aren't allowed to participate in any matches. Chairman Li said as they approached a large mechanical door. He continued, for privacy reasons, you will be evaluated one at a time. After your evaluation, you may only use the approved techniques during the match. You will automatically be disqualified if you use a martial technique that wasn't approved. If you learn a new technique and wish to increase your list of approved techniques, you will need to be evaluated again for that specific technique. So, who wants to be evaluated first? Wang Bingbing quickly raised her hand. I will go first. She approached the door and waited for it to open, entering the spacious room behind the door that looked like an underground training facility a moment later. Chapter 1466 Technique Evaluation, 2. Chapter 1466 Technique Evaluation, 2. 1466 Technique Evaluation, 2. Once Wang Bingbing entered the training room, the door closed behind her. The interior of the room was extremely simple and empty. Other than a metallic human-shaped dummy standing in the middle of the room, there was nothing else. Standing by the wall were 3 individuals, 2 men and 1 woman. "Hello, can we have your name, faction, and current cultivation base?" the woman asked. "Wang Bingbing from the Demon's Sealing faction. 7th level Spirit Grandmaster." The woman nodded and said, "Thank you, Miss Wang. We will be the ones evaluating whether your martial techniques are safe enough for your upcoming faction war. What weapon do you use?" "A sword." One of the men pulled a wooden sword out of thin air and tossed it at her. "In order to determine whether your martial technique is safe or dangerous, we need to see its strength and control. For the first test, you may strike the dummy with full strength. The dummy can withstand a spirit lord's attack with no problem, so you don't have to hold back," said the woman. "You may strike the dummy with your martial technique whenever you are ready." Wang Bingbing nodded and took a deep breath before unleashing one of her martial techniques. Sha! Wang Bingbing's figure suddenly became blurry for the next few seconds. At the same time, dozens of red sword marks appeared on the dummy, each mark representing a hit and the damage it sustained. "Do you mind telling us the name of that technique and its rank? Although it will be recorded, the public cannot access it if you're worried about that." "Wandering Phantom Sword Arts. It's a divine rank technique." "No wonder. Each of your strikes at full strength was strong enough to kill a spirit grandmaster. Now, show us how much you can control its strength. I want you to imagine the dummy as a spirit apprentice cultivator and strike it with just enough strength to knock him out without any serious injuries." Wang Bingbing nodded and performed the technique again. This time, the sword marks on the dummy were orange in color. "Good." Now, the woman pressed a button on her remote controller, causing the dummy to start moving its limbs. "You will now spar with the dummy. Its strength has been adjusted to be as strong as that of a spirit grandmaster. I would like you to perform the technique on it a minute into your fight. Also, use the same amount of strength as you did just now." Sometime later, the dummy started moving and attacking Wang Bingbing. Although its movements were stiff and predictable, it moved quickly and had tremendous strength. A minute later, Wang Bingbing performed her martial technique, striking the dummy a dozen times in just a few seconds. Of her 12 strikes, 9 sword marks glowed orange and 3 green. After seeing the results, the 3 judges nodded with approved looks. The green sword marks indicated that the damage was superficial and would only leave bruises on a spirit apprentice. Strikes that could potentially break bones glowed orange, and life-threatening strikes glowed red. "Looks like you have sufficient control over your technique, Miss Wang. We will approve the utilization of this technique in your faction wars. You may show us if you have any more techniques you would like to use." Wang Bingbing nodded and proceeded to show off a few more martial techniques. The tests varied depending on the martial technique's properties and effects. For example, a martial technique with an explosive nature that attacks on a wide scale will have a different test than a technique that focuses on penetration. Wang Bingbing finished her evaluation after spending 10 minutes inside the room and came out with 3 martial techniques approved. "I will go next," Shi Lang said. He returned 15 minutes later with 2 martial techniques approved. "I don't plan on using any martial techniques for this match, so you can go," Mei Feng said to Wu Zhao. He nodded and entered the room. Wu Zhao only had a single martial technique evaluated, but due to its nature, they had to test it thoroughly. 10 dummies stood in a scattered formation before Wu Zhao, each wearing a badge around their waist. "Omicron M, you may begin whenever you are ready." Wu Zhao nodded before casually swiping his fan in the dummy's direction. A powerful gust of wind made purely of spiritual energy swept the dummies, quickly destroying the badges around their waist while their bodies glowed green. However, only 2 of the dummies glowed green, meaning the rest weren't damaged in the slightest. "Impressive control," the woman muttered in awe. Many players have tried to evaluate martial techniques that could attack on a wide scale, but almost all of them lacked the control needed for approval. Wu Zhao left the room half an hour later. "You're left, Yuan." Wu Zhao looked at him with a smile. Yuan nodded and approached the door, entering it. When the judges saw Yuan, they subconsciously swallowed nervously. It's really player Yuan. Despite his fame, not much is known about his combat prowess or abilities, but that will change starting today. They thought inwardly. While the 10 great families were aware of Yuan's prowess through experience, they valued such information and did not spread it unnecessarily, so the majority of the world remained oblivious to his capabilities. "Welcome, player Yuan. What is your current cultivation?" the woman asked. "9th level Spirit Grandmaster," he calmly said. "He's only a Spirit Grandmaster?" The judges were inwardly surprised, as they had expected him to be at least a Spirit Lord. "What weapon will you be wielding?" "I will be using 3 weapons. The sword, dagger, and zither." "Huh? 3 weapons? And a zither, too?" The judges were certainly surprised by his response. Among the millions of players around the world that have participated in faction wars, less than 100 players picked the zither as their weapon of choice, so one could imagine the judges' surprise to learn that the most popular player will also use the zither. Chapter 1467 Entering the Battlefield. Chapter 1467 Entering the Battlefield. 1467 Entering the battlefield. Outside the evaluation room, Wu Zhao asked the others, "How did your evaluations go?" "How?" "It was much simpler than I'd anticipated. As for whether it's reliable or not, I don't know." Wang Bingbing shrugged. "I cannot imagine it being that effective. Anyone can easily purposefully act weaker than they are in reality to get their techniques approved." Chairman Li smiled bitterly and said, "Honestly, it's really hard to accurately gauge a person's strength and determine whether it's truly safe or not for them to use any technique. Our technology is simply lacking for this subject due to how new cultivation is in our world, so it's mostly up to our judges' judgment. However, give it a few more years, and we should have enough experience and information about cultivation to accurately gauge a cultivator's strength. With that being said, once the formation is completed, we will no longer need to evaluate people to determine whether they can use a martial technique or not." An hour later, the door opened, and Yuan casually walked out of the room. "How did it go? Did you get any techniques approved?" Shi Lang asked him. He nodded, "Yes." "How many techniques did you get approved?" "That's a secret," he said with a smile. Chairman Li looked inside the room and saw the judges' weird expressions, causing him to raise an eyebrow. Why did they look disappointed? He wondered inwardly. He decided to ask them later and said, "The faction war between Demon Sealing Faction and Fiery Locust Swarm will begin shortly. Let's get the participants prepared." "Okay." While Chairman Li led them to the dressing room to get changed, the 3 judges muttered to each other. "That was it? He's a lot weaker than the rumors. Right? None of his techniques were that powerful. I was expecting something amazing since he dared to challenge the Fiery Locust Swarm with a dozen members." Wait a minute. Is that it? We've only evaluated 4 people. What about the rest? Either they don't plan on using any martial techniques, or they won't be participating. Surely, it's the former, right? Meanwhile, the Fiery Locust Swarm was already prepared for the faction war and began gathering on the battlefield. "It's the Fiery Locust Swarm. Please teach those arrogant bastards from the Demon Sealing Faction a thing or two. I have bet all of my savings on your victory today. Don't disappoint me." The crowd went crazy the moment the Fiery Locust Swarm started appearing. The audience area had enough space to accommodate 10 million spectators, and every single seat was filled. Not to mention the tens of millions of individuals sitting in anticipation before their television. Yuan and the others had just finished changing into their uniforms, which were plain white and devoid of any design, unlike the Fiery Locust Swarms, which sported red and black colors and an emblem. Since you guys don't have your own uniform, this will have to suffice. Chairman Li said to them. We need to design our own uniform, huh? Yuan muttered. We can think of something later, said Mei Feng. Here. Everyone besides the ruler will be wearing this green badge. The ruler will be wearing a golden badge. Chairman Li showed them a basket of badges. Everyone besides Mei Feng took the green badge and wore it around their waist. Also, here are the weapons you requested. Everyone picked their weapon. You're going to use 3 weapons? Bai Lianhua looked at Yuan with wide eyes. A zither. Xia Jingyi glared at the zither with a dumbfounded look on her face. You may enter the arena now if you want to familiarize yourself with the field and start preparing for the match, but you are forbidden from crossing the red line before the match begins, or you will automatically be disqualified. Like the fiery locust swarm, Yuan and the others decided to enter the field early. Good luck, brother Yuan. Give em a good beating. Yuro cheered. Show the world your prowess, Yuan. Bai Lianhua smiled. Good luck. Xia Jingyi said in a bashful manner. The Demon Sealing faction entered the battlefield. Look. It's the Demon Sealing squad. You mean the Demon Sealing faction? Huh. Wait a minute, why are there only 5 of them? I thought they had a dozen members. Ha ha ha. Did more than half of them oversleep? Perhaps they all quit after learning that they had to fight 40,000 players with just a few of them. If a faction's member count dips below 10 for over 30 days, they are required to disband, correct? Is the Demon Sealing faction already ending before it could even begin? I don't understand their method of managing the faction. It had so much potential, but they didn't seize their chances for whatever reason. They probably thought nobody was worthy enough to join their elite ranks, hence why they have only accepted 2 members since their founding. Countless people in the audience started mocking the Demon Sealing faction when they appeared. It was a spectacle that wasn't unexpected but still surprising, especially given how popular Yuan was. Young master, you should know I had invested much in our victory. Mei Feng suddenly said. Huh? Invested? How? You know how people in horse races bet on the winning horse? Well, I am betting on our victory. Due to how many people are betting against us, we'll easily make a fortune if we win. Mei Feng spoke with a calm smile on her face. And what if we lose? Yuan chuckled. Then I'll lose all of my money. Surely, you won't let me suffer such a fate, right? Mei Feng glared at him. Yuan merely smiled in silence. He turned to gaze at the sky, where a timer was ticking down to the start of the match. 12:20, 12:19, 12:18. He then used his divine sense to examine the fiery locust swarm located on the opposite side of the battlefield. 41,982 of them, huh? He muttered with a calm smile, unfazed by their overwhelming number, which vastly outnumbered his team by 10,000 to 1. Chapter 1468 Outnumbered 10,000 to 1. Chapter 1468 Outnumbered 10,000 to 1. 1468 Outnumbered 10,000 to 1 inch. The enemy has exactly 41,982 players. 41,983 if you count their ruler. This means they outnumber us 10,000 to 1, Yuan said to the others. Nearly 42,000, huh? This is going to be rough even for us. Shi Lang wiped the invisible sweat off his forehead. Is this really doable? Wang Bingbing looked at Yuan, who wore a confident smile on his face. I doubt he arranged this match just so we could lose our debut match. Wu Zhao said. So, what's the plan? Yuan then said, it's quite simple. We will wait for our opponents to move first and respond accordingly. As mentioned before, they will most likely toy with us a little instead of trying to crush us as fast as possible. I will stay back here to protect our ruler while the rest of you will confront the opponent. Huh? You're going to stay back while we fight them? Shi Lang looked at him with wide eyes. Yuan nodded with a calm smile. This is also training. You need to experience what it feels like to be overwhelmed by the enemy in numbers. Don't worry, it's not like I won't do anything. I will support you guys from the rear with buffs and whatnot. In a seated position, Yuan suddenly hovered in the air and placed the zither on his lap, giving the appearance of a god looking down on everyone there. You know, even though we're also spirit grandmasters, we cannot stay in the air for as long as you. Is there a trick to flying or something? Wang Bingbing suddenly asked him. They could only hover in the air for, at most, a few minutes before running out of spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in this world is too weak to support your flight, so you must use more of your own energy to sustain your flight. The only way to fix it would be to increase your own spiritual energy, he said. That sounds easier said than done. It sucks being able to fly without problem but not in this world. Wang Bingbing sighed. You'll eventually get there. Eventually, the countdown in the sky reached 0. Welcome to Arena 1, guests from around the world. I, Xiaoxiao, will be your speaker for this match. The audience went into an uproar after hearing and recognizing this sweet voice to be a famous celebrity, a renowned singer. Fairy Yen? I thought she was a singer. Why is she suddenly working as a speaker? The organizers must have specifically hired her for this special occasion. Suddenly, a beautiful young lady appeared above the arena through projection, and on her face was a sweet smile that could charm even heaven itself. Xiaoxiao continued speaking. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for allowing me to be here today. As a big fan of player Yuan, when I heard that his faction was making its debut, I immediately requested to be the speaker for their match, and I am very grateful to have received this role. Now, for this match, we have the challenger, the Demon Sealing faction, and the fiery Locust swarm, who accepted the challenge. The match terms are as follows. There is no player limit, no cultivation limit, and martial techniques are allowed. The match rules are as follows. Killing and crippling another player is strictly prohibited. Any performance-enhancing drugs are prohibited. The players may only use the weapons provided to them. Those who break any of these rules will immediately be removed from the match and penalized accordingly. The match will end when either ruler is eliminated or the time runs out. Now, let's give the participating factions a brief introduction. We have the fiery Locust swarm, who is currently ranked 86th in the world. Led by Su Buqin, they have almost 42,000 members with 350 spirit masters, 9 spirit grandmasters, and 1 spirit lord. They currently have a record of 13 victories and 3 defeats. Their challenger, the Demon Sealing faction, needs no introduction, but they are currently unranked with 0 matches in their record, making this their debut. They currently boast a team of 12 members, all under the leadership of none other than the renowned player Yuan, the undisputed number 1 player in Cultivation Online. Now I know what most of you are thinking. Why would the Demon Sealing faction challenge the fiery Locust swarm with just 12 members? Why are there only 5 of these 12 members currently on the field? Are they confident in winning this seemingly impossible to win match? Honestly, I don't have the slightest clue. But hopefully, we will get an answer soon. Okay, enough yapping from me. Let's get this match started. Another countdown appeared, residing beside Xiaoxiao's projection. 010, 009, 008, Omicron M. The audience also started counting down, causing the entire arena to tremble with their enthusiastic voice. 3, 2, 1. Let the match begin. A loud noise that indicated the start of the match buzzed throughout the arena, and the red line on the ground turned green. The match had begun, but nobody from the Demon Sealing faction moved. Meanwhile, only 100 players from Fiery Locust Swarm advanced toward the Demon Sealing faction's castle. It looks like the Fiery Locust Swarm does not plan on ending this faction immediately. Xiaoxiao commented as live streaming of the battlefield was displayed in the air for the spectators to see more clearly. Of course, none of the players on the battlefield were able to hear Xiaoxiao's commentary or see the live streamings, as the battlefield was covered by an invisible formation that blocked off sound and video projections. This formation had required over 100 array masters and several weeks of effort to build despite it being a mere level 1 formation. However, before the fiery Locust swarm's players could really go anywhere, a weird phenomenon occurred on the battlefield, halting their movements. Formation activate, Yuan muttered, activating the formation that revealed cheaters shortly after the match began. Chapter 1469 Exposing the Cheaters. Chapter 1469 Exposing the Cheaters. 1469 Exposing the Cheaters. The moment Yuan activated the formation, several people on the battlefield suddenly started lighting up like a Christmas tree, their bodies glowing bright red. What the fuck is happening to me? Why am I glowing red? These players were shocked at first. Their shock turned into puzzlement when they noticed that not every player was glowing red. These players slowly came to a realization when they saw the other players who were glowing red had consumed performance-enhancing drugs right before the match began. Upon this realization, they started sweating profusely, and like paranoid individuals, they anxiously looked around to see if something was going to happen to them. However, nothing happened even after many moments. Eventually, these players stopped glowing red. Seeing this, they all sighed in relief. What happened just now? Why were all of those players glowing red? Xiaoxiao questioned out loud. Did someone from the Demon's Sealing faction use a technique? But none of them have moved yet, and nothing happened to those players who glowed red. What a weird phenomenon. Meanwhile, inside a large room filled with high-ranking officials from the Cultivators Association that managed the great battlefield, Chairman Li slammed the table in anger and shouted, "These cheating bastards! I cannot believe how many of them felt the need to cheat despite already having a major advantage. Do none of them know shame? Heavens! I also can't believe it. My eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when I first saw the number of players exposed as cheaters. Out of the almost 42,000 players from Fiery Locust Swarm, a whopping 30,000 of them glowed red. This meant that more than half of their players were cheating with performance-enhancing drugs. To think that even their leader, Subuqin, a spirit lord, would resort to cheating when they outnumber their opponents 10,000 to 1. How disgusting. Is this formation really reliable? I cannot fathom how nearly the entire faction is cheating in what seems like a guaranteed victory without the need for drugs. Why would they do something so risky and stupid? One of the people there asked out loud. I cannot tell you what's going through their minds, but I can assure you that player Yuan is trustworthy. He wouldn't lie about something like this, as it wouldn't benefit him in any way. Chairman Li said. Let's say the formation is working as intended, and all these players are cheating. What now? Do we remove all of them? That would greatly disturb the match, another person asked. No, we won't remove them. In fact, we won't do anything. What? You're just going to let them cheat? Yes. This is what player Yuan personally requested, after all. He asked me to turn a blind eye to these cheaters until after the match. Why on earth would he do that? He could have reduced his enemy's forces by 3/4 without doing a single thing. Maybe he wasn't expecting for there to be so many cheaters? Whatever the reason, since it's his request, he cannot blame us for not acting even if it results in his faction's defeat. Sure enough, Yuan hadn't expected the formation to expose so many cheaters. In fact, he even doubted the formation's accuracy. Of course, Yuning assured him that the formation was working properly. More than half of them are cheating, huh? Well, that won't change anything. Huh? What did you just say? Wang Bingbing and the others turned to look at him with wide eyes. Did you just say that more than half of them are cheating? They have over 40,000 players against our 5, for heaven's sake. Wu Zhao cried out loud. Yuan smiled and said, so what if they are cheating? Even if all of them are cheating, it just means that they will be slightly stronger than anticipated. It won't change anything. Anyways, they have begun to move. There are 129 players coming our way. Who wants to show off first? Shi Lang stepped forward with a resolute face and said, I will go. Very well. Yuan nodded and started playing the zither. The moment Shi Lang heard the music, he felt a surge of strength coursing through his body, his reflexes sharpening and his body becoming lighter. It was as if he had been reborn into a stronger, more capable version of himself. What in heaven's name is this? Shi Lang inspected his body with a shocked expression. I just gave you some buffs, that's all. How do you feel? He responded with a bright smile, like I can fight against the entire world, much less 100 players. You'll encounter them if you move straight in that direction. Yuan raised his arm and pointed in a certain direction. Without saying anything else, Shi Lang tightly gripped his spear and started running toward the approaching enemy. Oh! What do we have here? The Demon's Ceiling faction has started moving, but they're only sending a single member into battle. Xiaoxiao commented. Heavens! Look how fast he's moving. He'll encounter the fiery locust swarm in no time. And despite moving far away from Yuan, Shi Lang could still somehow hear his music. My body is still growing stronger. What a mythical technique. Sometime later, Shi Lang stopped moving when he noticed a group of individuals in the distance. The group also stopped moving when they noticed Shi Lang. Is he alone? Seriously? Ha ha ha. This is practically a free match. While the fiery locust swarm players stood in place to laugh, Shi Lang activated his movement technique and quickly closed their distance. Seeing this, the fiery locust swarm players did not panic and only laughed louder. He really thinks he can take us on by himself. Most of these players were spirit apprentices, and only 6 were spirit masters. Shi Lang didn't even bother speaking to them. The moment he was close enough, he started swinging and thrusting his spear. The fiery locust swarm players tried to surround him, but Shi Lang was simply too fast for them and quickly overwhelmed them. Crack! 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 The fiery locust swarm players' badges were destroyed rapidly, and in just a few minutes, Shi Lang took all of their lives without breaking a sweat or being hit once. Chapter 1470 Demons Sealing Factions Prowess. Chapter 1470 Demons Sealing Factions Prowess. 1470 Demons Sealing Factions Prowess. Amazing. With swift movements, player Shi Lang has managed to defeat 100 players all by himself without getting hit once. Xiaoxiao exclaimed in excitement. D. Shortly after Shi Lang defeated the players, Su Boken's tablet notified him of his players' deaths and the locations of their deaths. Due to the spacious expanse of the arena, the leaders of each faction are equipped with a tablet that monitors their own players' location and available members. Regrettably, the tablet's capabilities were limited, leaving them blind to their enemy's location until it was too late. Meanwhile, Yuan's divine sense was strong enough to cover the entire island, much less the arena, allowing him to see every player on the battlefield like a god. After a player is defeated, they have to leave the battlefield immediately, and any interaction with those still participating is strictly forbidden. Sometime later, Su Boqin decided to send more players to the Demon's Ceiling faction's castle. 3,000 players were split into 3 groups, with 1,000 players in each group. Moreover, each of these groups took separate paths. One group advanced in a straight line, heading to where the previous group was defeated, while the other 2 groups advanced north and south. Looks like the fiery locust swarm decided to ramp things up for the Demon's Ceiling faction. How will they deal with this predicament? Xiaoxiao commented. Seeing this, Yuan used his divine sense to communicate with Shi Lang. There are another 1,000 players advancing towards you. Most of them are spirit apprentices and spirit warriors with 30 spirit masters. 1,000, huh? Looks like I can no longer hold back. A nervous smile appeared on Shi Lang's face after hearing this information. Even with his talent and experience, fighting 1,000 players at once would be difficult. After speaking with Shi Lang, Yuan spoke to Wang Bingbing and Wu Zhao. He looked at Wang Bingbing and said, "I'll leave the north to you. They have 1,000 players." Okay. He shifted his gaze to Wu Zhao next and continued, "You can take the south. You'll also face 1,000 players. 1,000 players without any warm-up, huh? No matter. The ancient rank technique will be mine. An excited smile appeared on Wu Zhao's face as he elegantly fanned his face. In your dreams, Wu Zhao. The reward will be mine. Wang Bingbing exclaimed as she started advancing toward the north. We shall see about that. Wu Zhao replied as he advanced toward the south. What is this? Both Wang Bingbing and Wu Zhao from the Demon's Ceiling faction also began moving. And they appear to be heading directly toward the fiery Locust Swarm's players. How is this possible? It's almost as if they can see everyone's movements. Xiaoxiao expressed her surprise and confusion after seeing the Demon's Ceiling faction's movements. The spectators were also bewildered and began wondering if the Demon's Ceiling faction had a technique for seeing their opponent's location. Is that why many of the fiery Locust Swarm members glowed red at the beginning of the match? It must have been caused by the Demon's Ceiling faction and have some kind of tracking effect. The audience quickly misunderstood the situation. Meanwhile, Meifeng approached Yuan and asked, "Are you just going to stay here and wait until they are defeated?" Normally, the ruler would stay within the castle and be heavily guarded, but it didn't matter if Meifeng stayed inside or outside due to their insignificant number. In fact, she found it safer beside Yuan. No, I will be supporting them. Yuan retrieved his dagger and activated the technique 10,000 Ghost Blade, cloning his dagger until there were 300 daggers floating around him. Go. He commanded the daggers to fly into the air before splitting them into 3 groups and sending 100 daggers to each of his players. What a mythical technique. Player Yuan just created hundreds of daggers out of thin air to support his fellow players. I cannot even imagine the control required for such a feat. Yan Xiaoxiao commented. Meanwhile, the judges who evaluated and approved Yuan's techniques were shocked after watching this. What? He only created 50 daggers during the evaluation. I thought that was the extent of his abilities. He actually held back during an evaluation? Isn't that prohibited? He could be disqualified for this. Honestly, we should have seen this coming. There was no way player Yuan would be so weak. And it's not like cloning his weapons directly poses any danger to the players. Let's just see where this goes. Wang Bingbing and the others quickly noticed the daggers following them from the sky. I thought you weren't going to do anything? Wu Zhao asked him. Yuan smiled and said, I didn't say I'd do nothing. Don't worry, I won't take your kills unless absolutely necessary if that's what you're worried about. I'm actually feeling relieved to know that you'll be watching my back. Wang Bingbing smiled. Fight to your heart's content. Although I will be watching your back, I will only intervene if you're guaranteed to die. Shi Lang first encountered the members of the fiery Locust Swarm sometime later, as he was closest to their castle. What the? The fiery Locust Swarm players were taken aback when they saw Shi Lang, who was being followed by 100 floating daggers, feeling a little intimidated by his presence. Let's dance, you cheating bastards. Shi Lang immediately confronted them with a brave smile on his face. Rain Dragon's Crushing Waves. Shi Lang's first action was a martial technique, and like an unstoppable tsunami, he clashed with the enemy, who saw the figure of a blue dragon around Shi Lang right before he reached them. Ah! Everyone at the front of the group was sent flying the next second, their badges shattered. In the blink of an eye, over 100 players from the fiery Locust Swarm side were defeated. However, the fiery Locust Swarm players reacted quickly and surrounded Shi Lang. Seeing this, Shi Lang released his cultivation. His spirit grandmaster aura crushed those around him without injuring them, slightly restricting their movements. He then spun his spear above him, scattering his spiritual energy in every direction. Those who were struck by his spiritual energy were immediately sent flying. Fuck. He's much stronger than our spirit grandmasters. Even Su Buqin, who is a spirit lord, might not be his match. These players were shocked by Shi Lang's prowess, but they did not give up hope and started ganging up on him, attacking him from every direction. Shi Lang used his movement technique to avoid most of them and deflected the rest. Even though he was surrounded, he only had to fight several of them at once due to the lack of space. The enemy players were also distracted by the flying daggers in the sky, fearing that they would suddenly start attacking them. However, when the flying daggers remained still even many minutes later, these players started ignoring them and focused on defeating Lang, who had already defeated half of them at this point. The flying daggers must be for show only, a mere distraction. Let's focus on him. Yeah. He must be getting tired by now. Don't give up. At the same time, Wang Bingbing and Wu Zhao just entered their own battle with the enemy. Chapter 1471 Demon Sealing Factions Prowess, 2. Chapter 1471 Demon Sealing Factions Prowess, 2. 1471 Demon Sealing Factions Prowess, 2. Embraced by Heaven's Breath. With a casual wave of his sleeves and fan, Wu Zhao conjured a gust of wind infused with spiritual energy, which he directed towards the group of players charging towards him. Ah! The wind, though not physically harmful, was a force to be reckoned with. It tore through the air, shattering the players' badges into countless pieces, a sight that sent a wave of panic through their ranks. B badge. Quickly. Protect your badges. The players swiftly reached for their badges, protecting them from the wind by embracing them with their palms. Seeing this, Wu Zhao charged into their formation and started smacking the enemy players in the face with his fan. The moment these players removed their hands from their badges or fought back, Wu Zhao immediately went for their badges. Fuck. How is he so fast and slippery? Bastards like an eel. They cursed at him. Despite their best efforts, none of the fiery Locust swarm players were able to touch Wu Zhao's shadow, much less a hair on his body. In fact, Wu Zhao boasted the fleetest footwork and most agile movements among all members of the Demon Sealing faction, second only to Yuan. Due to his choice of weapon, he couldn't effectively block other larger weapons with his small fan, so he focused on avoiding his enemies. Sometime later, even though Wu Zhao started his fight later than Lang, he managed to defeat all 1,000 enemies before Lang. Although Lang also defeated all 1,000 enemies, he did not come out unscathed and was struck several times. However, he managed to keep his badge safe. During their entire fight, Yuan did not assist them even once. Meanwhile, Wang Bingbing was still in the middle of her fight, and she was struggling the most. She was neither as nimble as Wu Zhao nor had a long weapon like Lang. With that said, she was not weak by any means and still managed to defeat almost 1,000 enemies, albeit with some help from Yuan. After defeating about 900 players alone, Wang Bingbing started feeling fatigued, causing her movements to become more sluggish. One of the enemy players eventually broke through her defenses and would have destroyed her badge if not for Yuan's interference. Right when Wang Bingbing was on the verge of losing her life, the daggers that had been inactive and silently watching the fight like a spectator suddenly moved, blocking the strike that would have taken her life. Wang Bingbing clenched her teeth in frustration after seeing this and decided to stop holding back. They were right. Trying to fight them while holding back so much is incredibly difficult and exhausting. Wang Bingbing stopped being defensive and started attacking more aggressively. Wandering Phantom Sword Arts. Wang Bingbing's figure became blurry and even looked like shed multiplied, splitting into 4 separate figures. What the? The remaining players were surprised by her sudden aggression and use of martial techniques, as she had fought them without any techniques this entire time. If you don't want any broken bones, you'd better block this properly. Wang Bingbing warned them as she charged at them without hesitation. Ah! My hands! I think my fingers are broken. Wang Bingbing purposefully aimed for their hands, as such injuries are not considered severe unless she chopped off their fingers. After defeating her opponents, Wang Bingbing fell to her buttocks and immediately started cultivating to restore her energy. You're holding back a little too much and wasting energy by doing so, Yuan said to her. I'm worried that I'd accidentally used too much strength, she sighed. Yuan smiled and said, Don't worry. I will stop you if I sense that anything might go wrong. Okay. Then I will stop holding back. Wang Bingbing nodded excitedly. Meanwhile, Xiaoxiao continued her commentary. The Demon Sealing faction is truly something. Each of their members has managed to defeat 1,000 players all by themselves. The audience also chatted. While undeniably impressive, they have yet to defeat even 10% of the fiery locust swarm's entire army. Right? And how long can they keep this up? They'll probably be too exhausted even to lift their weapons after another battle or two. Su Buqin looked at his tablet with a pondering expression. They've managed to intercept and defeat all 3 of our groups, huh? He didn't immediately send more players onto the field and waited. Sometime later, several players from the fiery locust swarm returned to the castle after scouting the battlefield and recalled everything they witnessed to Su Buqin. What? They only have 5 players, including the ruler? That's impossible. They are surely hiding inside the castle or somewhere on the field. Su Buqin doubted this information. Unlike the audience, the fiery locust swarm had no idea that they were not fighting against the entire Demon Sealing faction but just half. That's what I thought too, but their ruler was not hiding in their castle but standing out in the open in front of their castle with player Yuan. The other 3 players were fighting our players on the field. No, that can't be. Look again. I don't believe that they're facing us with just 4 people. Su Buqin ordered these scouts to redo their scouting. Yes. These scouts immediately returned to the battlefield and thoroughly searched the entire battlefield for the missing 7 players. Yuan naturally knew about these scouts but purposefully ignored them to see how Su Buqin would react to their information. An hour later, the scouts returned with their results. It's real. They only have 5 players on the field. We've searched the entire battlefield but couldn't find the others. I even sneaked inside their castle to see if they were hiding inside, but as expected, it was empty. Su Buqin narrowed his eyes and pondered the meaning behind their actions. Is this a trap? Or are they seriously looking down on us? After pondering for several minutes, Su Buqin looked at the 39,000 people waiting in front of their castle with a resolute face and shouted, "The Demon Sealing faction dares to look down on us and mock us by sending just 5 of their 12 players to confront us in this faction war. Let's show them the consequences of mocking us by trampling over them and shattering their arrogance." The players roared, causing the place to tremble. Shortly later, Su Buqin, accompanied by his entire faction of 39,000 players, marched towards the Demon Sealing faction's castle. Chapter 1472 An Endless Battle. Chapter 1472 An Endless Battle. 1472 An Endless Battle. Oh my. It looks like the fiery locust swarm has had enough and decided to end this once and for all. Although the Demon Sealing faction has done an excellent job repelling their enemy so far, how are they going to react to the fiery locust swarm's full aggression? Xiaoxiao's voice trembled from excitement. Ha ha ha. It's over for the Demon Sealing faction. There's no way they can defend against this with just 4 people. Hurry up and end this so I can get my winnings. The audience could feel their heartbeat increasing with every step the fiery locust swarm took toward the Demon Sealing faction's castle. Seeing the fiery locust swarms move, Yuan used his divine sense to speak to Wang Bingbing and Wu Zhao, "Make your way to Shilang. The fiery locust swarm has finally decided to act. All of them are advancing toward Shilang's direction." Wang Bingbing and Wu Zhao, who had been cultivating to replenish their spiritual energy, immediately stood up and started running toward Shilang's direction. They should still have around 39,000 players left, right? Are you telling us to stop them with just the 3 of us? Wu Zhao asked. Yuan smiled and said, "I don't expect you guys to defeat all of them by yourselves, but I want you to defeat as many as you can. I will take over once you guys can no longer continue. Also, I doubt they'll all attack you at once. I hope you're right." They regrouped with Shilang sometime later and prepared to confront the fiery locust swarm. They will arrive soon. After a while, a multitude of people emerged on the horizon, advancing steadily towards them like a vast sea. Wang Bingbing and the others exchanged nervous glances as they stood face to face with the approaching army, their throats dry with apprehension. Nothing could have readied them for this confrontation. Su Buqin, who was leading the army from the front, stopped moving and silently stared at Wang Bingbing and the others. He narrowed his gaze as he questioned, "Is it true that only 5 of you are participating in this faction war?" "So what if it's true?" Shi Lang replied. "Are you looking down on us?" "So what if we are?" Wu Zhao sneered. Su Bokin's body trembled in anger. He pointed at them and roared, "Where is Player Yuan? Tell him to get his ass over here. If you want to fight Yuan, you'll have to get past us first." "Humph. Who do you think you are?" "A bunch of arrogant bastards. It won't take any effort to get rid of you." "If it won't take any effort to get rid of us, why did you bother risking everything with performance-enhancing drugs?" Wu Zhao asked as he fanned his face, which wore a cheeky smile. "What did you say?" Su Bokin's face immediately darkened with a deep frown. The players of Fiery Locust Swarm also became anxious upon hearing such words. "What? You think we wouldn't know?" Shi Lang chuckled. "Those are hefty accusations, but I'll grant you the opportunity to retract them." Su Bokin's voice thundered with anger. "There's no point trying to hide it. Chairman Li and the organizers are already aware of it." Wang Bingbing said. "If they know, why haven't they taken any action? We should have been disqualified the moment they knew. This proves that you're just making baseless accusations. It's okay if you don't believe us. You'll find out once our match ends. Don't worry, it will end soon." Su Buqin pointed his sword at them and roared in a commanding voice, "If you are a spirit apprentice, attack them. But don't let them suffer a quick defeat. Wear them out and make them regret tarnishing our faction's reputation." Hundreds of players immediately detached from the formation and charged at Wang Bingbing and the others. Seeing this, the Demon Sealing faction immediately raised their weapons and prepared to fight back. Despite their overwhelming numerical advantage, the Fiery Locust Swarm has refrained from unleashing their full force. Xiaoxiao narrated. Surrounded on all sides with no avenue of escape, Wang Bingbing and the others found themselves in a relentless onslaught. Yet, unlike before, they weren't besieged by the entire enemy force at once and only needed to focus on one player at a time. However, with every player they defeated, another swiftly stepped into the fray, ensuring that their battle continued without giving them a chance to catch their breath. 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, despite defeating thousands of players, they were still surrounded with no end in sight. The enemy forces dwindled slightly and at a sluggish pace. Meanwhile, Wang Bingbing and the others found themselves rapidly depleting their energy, their endurance stretched to its limits in this seemingly endless battle. In fact, if it hadn't been for Yuan's interference every now and then through the flying daggers, they would have long lost their lives. "How long do we have to keep this up?" Shi Lang cried out loud. While it appeared to the others that he was talking to himself, his words were actually directed at Yuan. "If you want to give up, you can. However, I will tell Leah to give special training sessions to the first one to give up." Yuan spoke to them with divine sense. When they heard his words, the thought of giving up immediately vanished from their head. 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, after taking down 7,000 opponents together, they were so worn out they could barely lift their weapons, let alone swing them. "Keep pushing them. They're on the verge of collapse." Su Buqin laughed out loud. "Player Yuan. Are you seeing this? Stop hiding and get your ass out here." Meanwhile, the audience marveled at the Demon Sealing faction's remarkable endurance. Goodness gracious! The Demon Sealing faction has put on quite the spectacle. None of us could have foreseen the extent of their struggle. Sadly, it seems they can hardly press on. Xiaoxiao remarked, voicing the astonishment shared by the onlookers. A few more minutes later, just as Wang Bingbing fell to her knees from exhaustion, Yuan's voice resounded. "You guys have done enough. I will take over from here." Chapter 1473 A Single Move. Chapter 1473 A single move 1473 A single move After Yuan spoke with Wang Bingbing and the others through divine sense, he pulled his finger across the zither on his lap, creating a powerful ripple that swept throughout the entire battlefield. The ripple traversed at the speed of sound, reaching Wang Bingbing and the others in just a few seconds. As the ripple swept the crowd, every player who had been touched by the ripple was sent tumbling to the ground. Another ripple appeared a second later. When Wang Bingbing and the others were touched by this ripple, they felt their spiritual energy recover a good amount, more than enough for them to move. Come back. Yuan's voice resounded again. Without hesitation, the three of them stood up and started running back to the demon sealing faction's castle. They're trying to escape. Don't let them get away. Chase. Chase after them. Su Buqin hastily shouted when he saw this, and he quickly started chasing after them, with the rest of his faction following behind. Although the spirit apprentices and spirit warriors were quickly left behind, the spirit grandmasters, who were full of energy, quickly caught up with them. However, right when they are about actually to catch up, Yuan interrupts them with the flying daggers. Fuck. This must be Player Yuan's doing. Why are you still hiding like a coward, Player Yuan? Come out and face us if you dare. You are the one who challenged us, not the other way around. As they approached the demon sealing faction's territory, Yuan said to Mei Feng, I will go now. What about me? Stay here. The others will be returning soon. Okay. Yuan turned to face the fiery locust swarm and flew toward their direction. Player Yuan is finally on the move. And he's speeding towards the fiery locust swarm like a bullet. Yen Xiaoxiao's voice brimmed with excitement as she witnessed the scene, her shout echoing loudly through the air. Does he really think he'll be able to defeat the fiery locust swarm by himself? They still have over 30,000 players left. Does he think he can enter the scene at the last second and defeat the enemy like a hero? What an arrogant and delusional bastard. Why is he so popular, anyway? We don't even know his capabilities. He may be a top player but nobody has seen him in action before. I think he was already famous before. If I recall correctly, he was a musician. Being the number one player boosted such popularity. What makes him the number one player? Because he ascends faster than everyone else? I don't think that is a good indicator. Sometime later, Yuan reached his destination. The demon sealing faction players stopped running when they saw Yuan. Su Buqin and everyone else stopped chasing after them and lifted their head to look at Yuan, who hovered above them like a deity. Yuan. Wang Bingbing felt like crying when she saw him, especially after what she'd just experienced. He smiled at her and said, Good work, you guys. Regroup with Miss Mei Feng and get some rest. I will take care of them now. I can stay behind just in case, said Shi Lang. You can stay here to watch if you want, but you won't have a chance to help. That's good enough. I want to see how you'll deal with them. Shi Lang nodded. That's not fair. I also want to watch. Wang Bingbing said. Wu Zhao shook his head and said, Guess he'll return alone. Don't you dare let them get to the castle, Yuan. Yuan acknowledged with a confident smile. As Wu Zhao left the scene, Yuan retrieved his sword and swung it at the ground. Shah. He engraved a long sword mark in the ground that served as a line, separating him and the demon sealing faction members. None of you will make it past this line. Yuan declared in a calm voice with an overbearing aura around him. Ha ha ha. You sure act big for someone on the verge of defeat, Player Yuan. Su Buqin pointed his sword at Yuan and laughed. On the verge of defeat? Who decided that? Open your eyes and see for yourself. You are the only one who can fight from your side while we still have over 32,000 players left. We outnumber you 32,000 to 1. Even you can't do anything about this. Yuan's gaze swept across the army below him, sending chills down their back. Without saying a word, he retrieved his zither and pulled a single string. Heaven-severing zither arts. Ding! A profound ripple swept the battlefield, instantly destroying over 7,000 badges from the fiery Locust swarm's side. Now I am only outnumbered 25,000 to 1, Yuan spoke in a calm voice a moment later. What? Not only the members of the fiery Locust swarm but also every single spectator present was shaken to their core by the sight of Yuan effortlessly dispatching 7,000 players in the blink of an eye. H heavens! What did we just witness? With a single move, player Yuan eliminated over 7,000 players from the battlefield. What a power play! Xiaoxiao couldn't contain her excitement and started shouting like a fangirl. The judges who evaluated his technique stared at the live stream with their jaws touching the ground. What monstrous control! I thought it was already amazing enough when he accurately hit 500 targets at once during the evaluation. Xia Jingyi's expression reflected sheer awe as she murmured, "What level of mastery and control must one attain to achieve even half of what had just done?" Meanwhile, Yuan continued speaking as he stared at Su Buqin. "I could easily wipe all of you with a single note, but that would take away all the fun, so I only removed those who aren't under the effects of performance-enhancing drugs. As for the rest of you, sorry, but I'll have you stick around for a little longer. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1474 Unparalleled Dominance. Chapter 1474 Unparalleled Dominance. 1474 Unparalleled Dominance. After witnessing Yuan's overwhelming prowess, the fiery Locust swarm players subconsciously started taking steps backward, almost as though they were unwilling to confront him. Seeing this, Su Buqin angrily roared at them, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" He must have consumed most, if not all, of his energy with that one attack just now. There is nothing to fear. We still overwhelmingly outnumber him. After hearing his words, the players stopped moving back, which made sense. After all, there was no way a mere spirit grandmaster would have enough spiritual energy to repeat such a powerful technique. They clenched tightly onto their weapons and advanced toward Yuan, who casually hovered in the air. Su Buqin pointed his weapon at Yuan and shouted, "Come down and fight us if you dare." Yuan smiled and descended to the ground. "I was going to do that even without your yapping. After all, how else am I going to beat you all?" He tossed the zither in his hands to Wang Bingbing, who swiftly caught it. Then, wielding a sword in his right hand and a dagger in his left, Yuan approached the nearest player. "Ah!" Seeing Yuan approaching him, the player immediately released a war cry before swinging his weapon. Yuan countered with his dagger, blocking the attack. Then, using his sword, disarmed the player. After disarming the player, Yuan started smacking him in the face with the sword until both of his cheeks were swollen, destroying his badge half a second later. This happened in less than 3 seconds, leaving the player confused and baffled. However, Yuan did not stop after eliminating the player and immediately moved to the next one. The players tried to fight back, but none of them were able to block his attacks, much less land a hit on him. In less than a minute, Yuan eliminated over 20 players, none of whom left the battlefield without being badly beaten. "Why are you fighting him one at a time? Surround him and attack him together," Su Buqin instructed. The players followed his instructions and quickly surrounded Yuan before attacking him together from all directions. However, no matter how many people attacked him at once, Yuan flawlessly blocked their attack, even striking back. The players felt like they were fighting someone with more than 2 arms. Su Buqin would occasionally send a few spirit masters into the fray to catch him by surprise, but this was completely ineffective. It was almost as if spirit masters were not different from spirit apprentices in his eyes. "Let's speed this up a little, shall we?" Yuan suddenly tossed his dagger into the air, and in the blink of an eye, it duplicated until 1,000 flying daggers were in the sky. Wah! Before the players could even react, the daggers rained down upon them, smacking them in the faces and stabbing their bodies. The players desperately tried to defend themselves, but they were simply powerless. In the blink of an eye, the fiery Locust swarm had dropped to 20,000 members. Fuck! How is he still fighting like this? He should have exhausted his spiritual energy long ago. Su Shijian anxiously gritted his teeth. Sometime later, he commanded 100 spirit masters and 3 spirit grandmasters to run past Yuan and target the demon sealing faction's ruler. Even if you capture their ruler, don't take their life yet, he said to them. Yes. These players ignored the battle between Yuan and the other players, running past him. However, right as they reached the sword mark, they sensed a cold gaze bearing down on them, sending chills throughout their entire body. I thought I said nobody would make it past the line. Yuan's voice resounded, followed by an unfathomable pressure that restricted all of their movements. Heavenly Domain. Upon Heavenly Domain's activation, all the players on the field felt as though their bodies were being restricted in invisible chains. It did not matter whether they were spirit apprentices or a spirit lord like Su Shijian, none of them could lift a single finger within the Heavenly Domain. What is happening on the battlefield? Why did everyone's movements suddenly halt? It's as if they're all frozen in time. What a phenomenon. Xiaoxiao expressed bewilderment after witnessing the scene. Wait a moment. I take back my words just a second ago. It appears that everyone but player Yuan is frozen. This must be his doing. What kind of technique did he use to stop their movements? The judges who evaluated him felt their souls leaving their bodies after witnessing this. He could completely restrict the movements of 20,000 people with that technique? That's totally cheating. He purposefully misled us during the evaluation again. They had experienced Heavenly Domain firsthand during the evaluation, but their movements were not completely stripped away, they were only made sluggish. Meanwhile, while the entire battlefield was frozen in time, Yuan casually walked out of his encirclement and approached the players who tried to get past the sword mark, each of his steps calm and steady, almost as though he had all the time in the world. Heavens! It's like he's taking a stroll in the park. What is he planning on doing next? Xiaoxiao's voice shivered from anticipation. As Yuan approached the group of players behind the sword mark, he raised his sword in a batting motion before striking them in the stomach with swift, precise blows, sending them hurtling back to Su Shijian's side like mere insects swatted away. He continued to do this for the next several minutes until all of those players were back right where they started. Afterward, he walked right back into the encirclement and released the Heavenly Domain, allowing them to move again. Let's continue, shall we? Yuan beckoned the dazed players surrounding him. Yet, none of them dared to move. His recent actions rendered not only the players but also the entire audience speechless, stunned by the display of his unparalleled power and dominance. Chapter 1475 End of the Faction War. Chapter 1475 End of the Faction War. 1475 End of the Faction War. Seeing how nobody dared to approach him, Yuan approached them himself. That fucking monster. How does he still have the energy to do that kind of stuff? The players who were swatted like flies all spat out some blood after spending a few moments on the ground groaning in pain. More like, where is he even getting the energy to do that when we can't use our powerful techniques because of the lack of spiritual energy in the air? Leader, what should we do now? Su Shijian clenched his teeth and fists until they bled. I refuse to believe that he's not exhausted after all that. He must be running low. We still have plenty of players to spare, too. He raised his voice and continued, do not fear. He's definitely running out of energy. It's only a matter of time. Whoever brings down player Yuan will receive $1 million and a heaven rank cultivation technique. Hearing this, the players roared and started charging at him again, their eyes raging with determination. This is more like it. Yuan laughed out loud as he continued his dance with the fiery Locust swarm players. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, as time passed, the players began doubting whether Yuan was really tired, much less exhausted. His movements remained fluid, and his breathing steady, mirroring the calmness he exhibited when the fight initially began. Leader, when is he going to run out of energy? The spirit grandmasters, waiting for their turn to strike, asked. We're down to 15,000 players. At this rate, take 5,000 players and charge through the line. My name is not Su Shijian if he can stop you. He commanded. Yes. Thus, the Spirit Grandmasters gathered 5,000 players from the rear of the formation and made another attempt to cross the line. When Wang Bingbing and Shi Lang saw this, they prepared to intercept them. Yet again, just as these players were on the verge of crossing the line, an invisible force constrained their movements, thwarting their advance. It's okay. Don't panic. He won't be able to restrict our movements for much longer. Su Buqin shouted. Yuan looked at him and smiled. Do you want to put that theory to the test? After all, we still have plenty of time left for our match. After saying those words, he took a seat on the ground and closed his eyes. Looks like player Yuan has used the mysterious technique to restrict his enemy's movements again. But why isn't he doing anything? A few minutes later, Xiaoxiao seemed to have realized something and commented, I think player Yuan is trying to tell the fiery locust swarm something, that he could do this all day if he wanted. As expected of player Yuan. His confidence and arrogance are simply off the chart. But let's see how long he can truly last. Surely, that technique consumes a tremendous amount of spiritual energy. 10 minutes later. Fuck. How much longer do we have to stay like this? My butt is itchy, but I cannot relieve it. Who said he was getting exhausted? What a load of bullshit. Leader. Please do something about this. With each passing moment of their movement being restricted by Yuan, the anxiety among the fiery locust swarm players surged, intensifying their sense of unease. Player Yuan. How long do you plan on messing with us? Fight us fair and square. Su Buqin roared at him. Yuan opened his eyes and looked at Su Buqin. Fair and square? That's funny coming from you. And if I don't mess with you a little, our match would have ended the moment it started, he said as he stood up and approached Su Buqin. Be bullshit. Yuan stopped in front of him and sneered, bullshit? I could have easily destroyed all of your badges in the last 10 minutes instead of doing nothing. He raised his hand and gently poked Su Buqin's badge with his sword. I could have eliminated all of you with my first move. He lowered his sword and asked, do you know why I didn't? Why? Su Buqin asked in a trembling voice. Because I wanted to enjoy something before it ceases to exist. Huh? What are you even talking about? Su Buqin wore a puzzled frown on his face. Little did he know that following this match, Yuan would create a formation enabling players to unleash their full strength without the looming fear of inadvertently causing harm to one another, which would inevitably change faction wars completely. Thus, he decided to enjoy it a little before that happened. You'll understand it soon, or not, since you'll be prohibited from participating in any future matches for using performance-enhancing drugs. Anyways, I guess it's about time I wrap this up. It was fun at the beginning, but I'm getting bored and do not want to look like a bully. The following moment, Yuan deactivated Heavenly Domain and used 10,000 ghost blades to clone his dagger to the technique's limit of 10,000. As 10,000 daggers ominously hovered above the battlefield, exuding a menacing aura, the fiery locust swarm players hesitated to make a move despite having regained their ability to do so. Seconds later, the daggers descended with swift and brutal precision, resulting in a scene that could only be described as a merciless massacre. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 players were eliminated. After another blink, the remaining players were also eliminated, with just one player remaining. I'll give you a chance, Yuan said as he looked at Su Buqin, who wore a look of disbelief on his face. Don't worry, I won't use any techniques. Su Buqin gritted his teeth, his grip on his weapon tightening as he charged fiercely at Yuan. A few seconds later, in less than 10 exchanges, Yuan sent Su Buqin tumbling face first to the ground. Is this the best you can do after stuffing your face with treasures and performance-enhancing drugs? Even the weakest member of Eternal Lotuses lasted longer than you. How disappointing. Yuan threw his sword at Su Buqin, shattering the badge around his waist and putting an end to their match. Chapter 1476 Post-Match Speech. Chapter 1476 Post-Match Speech. 1476 Post-Match Speech. Looks like we have a winner. Against all odds, the Demons Sealing faction has managed to defeat the fiery Locust swarm and emerged victorious in this faction war," Xiaoxiao announced in excitement. "Let's all give a round of applause to the Demons Sealing faction for their outstanding performance and the fiery Locust swarm for their effort." However, instead of celebrating, the majority of the audience was crying and cursing out loud, as they had bet a lot of money on the fiery Locust swarm's victory. "Fiery Locust swarm, you sons of bitches. I bet my entire savings on you. How could you lose to 5 players with over 40,000 players? You're fucking trash. Fuck. This must have been a setup to steal our money. There's no way the Demons Sealing faction won this. It just doesn't make sense. Right? That frozen movement bullshit must have been an act. There's no way such a powerful technique could exist." The audience erupted into an uproar, leaving Xiaoxiao feeling a tinge of panic. She knew the Demons Sealing faction's victory would cause an upset, but she didn't anticipate it reaching such a level. "I want a refund. This is a scam. This match was scripted. I want a refund. 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 Refund." The masses started chanting loudly. "Ha ha ha. Look at these losers. That's what they get for not believing in Player Yuan. I made a killing because of this match. Thank you, Player Yuan. I knew you wouldn't disappoint me." Amidst the clamor of the enraged crowd, there were still voices of gratitude, though they were drowned out by the majority. Meanwhile, inside one of the VIP rooms at Arena 1, Fiery Queen found herself in a furious outburst, hurling furniture about in a fit of rage. "That useless bastard. I poured so much resources and effort into him and his faction, and this is how he repays me? By suffering such a humiliating defeat?" Although the fiery Locust swarm wasn't Fiery Queen's faction, it was associated with her main faction as a subsidiary faction, the Fiery Garden of Hell, which was ranked 5th in the world. Sometime later, Xiaoxiao appeared on the battlefield in person with a microphone in her hands. She approached Yuan, who had regrouped with the others at their castle and was waiting for someone to tell them to leave the arena. "Hello, Player Yuan and the Demons Sealing faction. I am Xiaoxiao, and I am here for your post-match speech. It doesn't have to be long. If there's anything you want to say to the audience or the world, please don't hesitate." Yuan turned to look at her. She was a stunning young lady who commanded attention with her tall stature and graceful and confident standing. Her slender figure highlights her elegant poise, and she moves with a fluid grace that captivates all who behold her. Her vibrant pink hair cascades in soft waves, framing her face like a crown of blossoms in full bloom. But it's her sparkling emerald eyes and warm smile that truly mesmerizes anyone who meets her. With every glance, they seem to reveal a myriad of emotions, drawing people in with their magnetic allure. "Wah! Xiaoxiao. I didn't expect to meet my idol in such a place." Wuxia exclaimed, his face flushed and shocked. "Huh? You know her?" Shi Lang looked at him with a surprised face. "Of course. She's a famous idol and singer. I learned about her shortly after moving out of the Jaded Garden, and I've been a fan since then." Wuxia spoke in a proud manner. "Do all of us have to give a speech?" Wang Bingbing asked. "Nope. Just one of you will be fine. Then it's obvious who will do the talking." They all turned to look at Yuan. Seeing this, he beckoned for the microphone. "Player Yuan will now give us a quick post-match speech," she quickly announced. "Here you go." Xiaoxiao grabbed Yuan's hand with her free hand before intimately handing over the microphone to him, causing Wuxia's eyebrows to twitch. "Thank you." Although the others couldn't hear the audience's cursing, Yuan could hear them very well with his divine sense. He raised the microphone to his lips and spoke in a clear and calm voice. "Hello, this is Yuan speaking. I'm sure that many, if not most of you, are not satisfied with the results of this faction war. You're probably thinking that this was staged or that I cheated. Honestly, I don't care what you think or how you're feeling. This is the result. Whether you like it or not will not change anything, so suck it up and learn your lesson. That lesson being never to bet against me because I will always disappoint you. Xiaoxiao and the others stared at him with bewildered expressions, clearly caught off guard by Yuan's sudden decision to provoke the audience. What are you doing, player Yuan? Xiaoxiao called out to him in a low, mosquito-like voice. Yuan glanced at her and smiled, but he continued speaking. Fiery Queen, I'm sure you're not satisfied with the results either. Huh? Inside her room, Fiery Queen suddenly halted her movements when she heard her name being called out and snapped her head to stare at the live stream. Therefore, I will give you a chance to avenge your goons. Fiery Queen, I challenge your faction to a faction war with the same terms as this one. I don't care if you want to do it tomorrow or a month from now. I will send you the request later. The entire place turned dead silent as everyone tried to comprehend the situation before them. That arrogant son of a bitch. Fiery Queen threw an entire table across the room after hearing Yuan's challenge to her. You think you are invincible because you have a few tricks up your sleeves? Good. If you want a fight, I will give you one. She retrieved her phone and called a number. Send a challenge request to the Demon Sealing faction. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1477 Fiery Garden of Hell. Chapter 1477 Fiery Garden of Hell 1477 Fiery Garden of Hell, did I hear him correctly? He wants to challenge the Fiery Garden of Hell next. They are ranked 5th in the world with over 500,000 members. He can't be serious, right? Even if he's a little excited about defeating the fiery locust swarm, this is a little too much. Even if he challenges them and loses, it won't help me get my money back. Why did he target Fiery Queen, specifically? Do they have some sort of grievances with each other? Obviously. If you didn't know, the Fiery Locust Swarm is a subsidiary faction of Fiery Queen's main faction. The audience erupted into a frenzy of shock and surprise, their collective gasps and murmurs filling the air as Yuan's unexpected declaration of war still reverberated within their minds. That's all I have to say. Thank you for being here today. Yuan handed the microphone back to Xiaoxiao, who absent-mindedly accepted it, standing there with a dumbfounded expression plastered across her face. Let's leave now, he said to the others, who silently nodded their heads, clearly just as surprised as everyone else. Seeing their bewildered expressions, Yuan smiled, don't worry. I have no intention of dragging you into the faction war. This is my personal battle with Fiery Queen. I will confront her alone, though I will need one of you to assume the role of ruler. Are you serious, young master? Fiery Queen's faction, Fiery Garden of Hell, is ranked 5th in the world, and it has over 500,000 members. That's over 10 times the number of players we had to fight today. The formation will be ready by the time we fight, so I don't need to hold back as much. Even if there's 1,000,000 of them, it won't change a thing. As they made their way to the exit, Xiaoxiao snapped out of her daze and chased after them. Player Yuan. If you don't mind me asking, how much of your true capabilities did you display today? I have a feeling that you're still holding back your true strength. How much, huh? Would you believe me if I said that ID only displayed 1% of my true capabilities? Oh, 1%. Xiaoxiao stared at him with a gawking expression. He chuckled, all the techniques I showcased today are among my weakest and least lethal, as I lack confidence in restraining myself enough to prevent accidental fatalities if I were to employ my stronger techniques. However, that will change soon. Huh? What do you mean? How will things change? You'll find out soon. Sometime later, they encountered Chairman Li, who was waiting for them at the end of the exit. That was some post-match speech, Yuan. Thank you. The others are waiting for you. Are you able to come with me now? Sure. Yuan looked at the others and continued, you guys can regroup with Ro and the others. I will come once I am done with the meeting. Okay. Mei Feng and the others left shortly after, leaving Yuan, Chairman Li, and Xiaoxiao alone. Miss Yen, do you need something? Chairman Li asked her when he noticed that Shed stayed. She quickly nodded and turned to look at Yuan before speaking. I am actually a big fan of the Demon's Ceiling faction, especially you, player Yuan. It was your music that got me into singing. I'm sure the entire world will be talking about your faction after today, and if you don't mind, I would like to visit the Demon's Ceiling faction to interview you and your members to help the world understand you guys better. An interview, huh? Yuan mumbled with a pondering face. I believe the interview is a good thing, Yuan, Chairman Li suddenly interjected, his tone serious. With the Demon's Ceiling faction's debut, it'll be much harder to remain in seclusion, not to mention the results of your faction war with the fiery Locust swarm. Public sentiment will be low if not already, and this interview will definitely help you regain some. I know you don't care about such things, but think of your fellow members. After a moment of silence, Yuan nodded. An interview, huh? I don't mind. And I am not doing this to change the public sentiment toward us. I think it's a good thing to spread the other's reputation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I swear I won't disappoint you. Xiaoxiao almost started jumping up and down from excitement. Here is my contact information. You can give me a call whenever you are ready for the interview. She quickly wrote down her phone number on a napkin and handed it to him. All right, I'll give you a call after I speak with everyone. Xiaoxiao left the scene shortly after, and Yuan followed Chairman Li to the office where the protection formation had been built. You'll be in a disguise, correct? How should I address you? Chairman Li asked as they walked. You can call me Mr. Xian. Okay. After consuming an appearance-altering pill and transforming into a handsome middle-aged man, Yuan entered the room with Chairman Li. Upon entering, Yuan found several individuals already present, each emanating an aura of authority and accustomed to commanding respect. Allow me to introduce you all to Mr. Xian, the formation expert who will be creating the protection formation. Chairman Li introduced Yuan to the people inside the room before taking a seat with them. Please, have a seat. They gestured to him. Yuan nodded calmly and settled into a seat, his demeanor composed and unhurried. We've already been briefed about this formation that is allegedly capable of safeguarding players from serious harm or death during faction wars, but we need to hear it directly from you, Mr. Xian, one of the individuals said, his tone serious. Please provide us with a comprehensive overview of this formation and your qualifications. We will be entrusting countless lives to it, so we cannot do this half-heartedly. I understand. Yuan nodded and proceeded to explain about the formation in more detail. Chapter 1478 Heaven's Protection Grand Array. Chapter 1478 Heaven's Protection Grand Array 1478 Heaven's Protection Grand Array. This formation is officially known as the Heaven's Protection Grand Array. It's a level 6 formation that prevents any death and serious injuries as long as one remains within the formation and someone doesn't significantly exceed the strength of its creator. Yuan explained to the people in the room. For example, I can slice your throat with a sword or stab your eyes with a dagger, and you'll be perfectly fine as long as you stay within the formation. However, you'd still experience the sensation of pain as if the injury were genuine. Of course, if you're worried about that, I can also create a formation that can alter the amount of pain you experience. The protection formation isn't limited to weapons. From martial techniques that can cleave mountains to spiritual attacks, it can protect one from all sorts of damage. If you would like to experience its effectiveness firsthand, we already have the formation set up in this room, so you can go ahead and test it immediately. Hearing his words, the people in the room exchanged glances with each other. Clearly, nobody there wanted to go first and was suspicious of its reliability. Seeing this, Chairman Li stood up and said, I will volunteer to go first even though I have already experienced its effectiveness firsthand. He retrieved a steel sword and placed it on the table. I don't care who does it. Go ahead and swing that sword at me with the intention to kill me. Are you sure you want to do this, Chairman Li? What if something goes wrong? How can you put so much trust in someone with no credibility or reputation? I don't mean to be rude, but I've never heard of you until today, Mr. Xian. Everyone in the room turned to look at Yuan. It was only natural to be suspicious of someone they've never heard of yet claimed to be able to create level 6 formations when their best array masters are only level 2. I don't blame you for doubting my abilities. It's true that I am a nobody, and the reason you have never heard of me is that I prefer to remain low-key. I'll be completely honest with you. I have studied formations even before existed. What? How is that possible? I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but cultivation existed long before existed. There are even hidden families that have been cultivating since ancient times. I am from one of these families. The room fell silent. While the existence of these hidden families, such as those from Jaded Garden, remained concealed from the public eye, they were long known among society's elite echelons. Why have you decided to come out of hiding to do this? One of them suddenly asked. Yuan shrugged. With the entire world now aware of cultivation, there's no longer any reason to remain hidden. I am also tired of living a secluded life. What do you wish to gain from this? Fame? Wealth? I don't need any of that, nor am I asking for any payment. I am doing this simply because I find entertainment in faction wars, and I wish to make it even more entertaining for myself. This is purely an act of self-interest, nothing more, nothing less. With that being said, I have a favor, that you keep my identity a secret. After another moment of silence, one of the people there suddenly picked up the sword on the table and swung it at Chairman Li with all of his might. Wah! Because it happened so suddenly and without any warning, Chairman Li was not prepared for the attack and was taken aback when he was struck in the neck with it. The force was strong enough to send Chairman Li flying toward the wall, slamming into it. Fuck. That hurt. You could have, at the very least, warned me before you struck. Chairman Li cursed at the person who struck him after coughing a little. Heavens, he's actually unharmed. The people in the room stared at him with bewildered expressions. Let me try. Another person suddenly snatched the sword and swung it at the person who had just swung at Chairman Li. You fucker. Are you trying to scare me to death? The person who just got struck cursed loudly after getting off the floor a moment later. Soon, everyone in the room started swinging their weapons at each other without a care in the world. Ha ha ha. Taste my blade, you bastard. The situation reminded Yuan of his days in the orphanage when the children would pretend to fight each other with wooden sticks as weapons. Once they were tired of using their weapons, they started throwing their martial techniques around, quickly destroying the entire room. Yuan didn't interrupt them and patiently waited for them to finish. Several minutes later, Chairman Li and the others lay on the floor, visibly exhausted from their exertions. Are you guys satisfied with my formation? Yuan asked them with a calm smile on his face. Very much. So as long as we are inside this formation, we are essentially immortal? Yuan nodded, yes. You said that someone stronger than the creator might break the formation, correct? How strong are you? I will have the cultivation of a peak spirit king when I create the formation, so unless someone reaches spirit sovereign, it's impossible to break the formation. Peak spirit king? They were all shocked to learn his cultivation, Chairman Li included, as he thought Yuan was only a mere spirit grandmaster. Is there anything else we should know about the formation? What about additional functions? Let me think for a bit. Yuan closed his eyes and asked Yuning. Well, I can make it so that the formation will automatically teleport those who have taken enough damage to die to safety, she said. That's actually great. We won't need to wear a badge if we can automatically remove those who take too much damage. Yuan opened his eyes and shared with the others about the other function. It can do that, too. This formation is so convenient. Is there anything it can't do? Sometime later, after sharing with each other their thoughts on the matter, Chairman Li said to Yuan, we will redesign all of the arenas for this change. Do you mind waiting until then to create the formations? How long will that take? We will halt all faction wars to focus on the reconstruction and work around the clock, so it shouldn't take too long. I'd say about a month or so, including the time it'll take to plan and design the new arenas. Yuan nodded, all right, let's do just that then. After talking for a little longer, Yuan left the office with Chairman Li. Then I will contact you once the reconstruction is nearly finished. Sure. One more thing. When do you want to schedule your faction war with Fiery Queen? If they accept the challenge, we can do it immediately once the formation is completed. It will also be a good chance to show off the formation's effectiveness since many people will be doubtful at first. I understand. After Yuan left, Chairman Li promptly returned to the office to join the others in the task of redesigning the arenas. Chapter 1479 Alliance with Eternal Lotuses. Chapter 1479 Alliance with Eternal Lotuses. 1479 Alliance with Eternal Lotuses. Chairman Li, who was that person? I doubt that was his real appearance. One of the people in the room suddenly inquired when he returned. Are you really asking me about his identity when he clearly wants to keep it hidden for whatever reason? Chairman Li's piercing gaze met the person who had just spoken, his displeasure etched on his face. Are you going to be responsible for offending him because you care so much about his identity? Are you going to risk everything over a mere identity? Silence fell over the room as his words resonated with compelling logic, leaving everyone momentarily speechless. Chairman Li sighed a moment later. I know what you're all thinking, but forget about it. He's not someone you can take advantage of. Then how will we deal with the others? Once we halt the faction wars, inquiries will undoubtedly come flooding in from every direction. Someone voiced his concern. Let them question us. It's not like we're doing something illegal or suspicious, so we'll just answer them truthfully. Any more questions? That surnamed Xian, is he truly trustworthy? And how much do you trust him? Chairman Li stared at them with a serious expression on his face and responded in a clear voice. I trust him enough to risk my life. The people in the room exchanged glances with each other before nodding their heads. Chairman Li, our trust lies in you, not in that individual, so if you say that you'll trust him, we won't make things difficult for you. Let's immediately start the great battlefield's renovation, shall we? Meanwhile, after Yuan regrouped with Meifeng and the others, they left Arena 1. Not wanting to be recognized or surrounded, they all consumed an appearance-altering pill before leaving. Young Master, Fiery Garden of Hell has sent us a challenge request. The terms are the same as the one we sent to Fiery Locust Swarm. Meifeng notified him as they made their way to buy Lianhua's private jet. Is that so? Go ahead and accept it. I already did, she said with a smile. Now we wait until they finish their renovations. While Yuan and the others flew away from the great battlefield, discussions about the Demon Sealing faction's shocking debut filled every forum and website related to faction wars and... I just watched the Demon Sealing faction's debut. Is player Yuan even human? His members are also very strong. I can tell that they were holding back quite a lot, too. They really made a fool out of the Fiery Locust Swarm and those who mocked them. I always believed in player Yuan. Does anyone know what techniques were used by player Yuan? Can they be found in the myriad of techniques? Now that I think about it, this is the first time we've seen player Yuan's capabilities outside of. As for his capabilities inside Cultivation Online, it has yet to be seen. Young Master, we're getting a lot of emails from powerful backgrounds who wish to purchase the techniques you displayed during the faction war. Meifeng suddenly said to him as she browsed through her laptop. Some of them are from the 10 great families. Just ignore them, he casually said. Okay. Everyone is talking about your faction, Yuro chuckled as she swiped through her phone. It'd be weird if they weren't. Wang Bingbing shrugged. While we're on the topic of factions. Lianhua, want to form an alliance with the Demon Sealing faction? Huh? Bai Lianhua turned to look at him with a surprised face. I'm not sure if the concept of alliances between factions exists yet, but you understand its significance, don't you? Yuan continued. Essentially, we'll be mutually assisting each other in an official manner. Alliances exist. The Fiery Locust Swarm and Fiery Garden of Hell, for example. But I'm not sure how we'll be able to assist you guys. Bai Lianhua shook her head. We might never need your help and vice versa, but we'll never know for sure. Of course, even if you refuse to form an alliance with us, we won't do something as petty as refusing to help you in the future. Bai Lianhua quickly responded, I'm not refusing to form an alliance with you. In fact, I could not be any happier to do so. I'm just a little worried about our qualifications. Who cares about something as insignificant as that? The only qualification you need is my approval, and you already have it. Yuan smiled. If you say so, then I won't be humble. Bai Lianhua nodded. Then we'll be in your care. Yuan extended his hand for a shake. Bai Lianhua showed a bittersweet smile as she shook his hand. We're already in your care with the techniques you'll be giving us. Then I'll send you the alliance request right now, Mei Feng suddenly said. A few moments later, Bai Lianhua accepted the request, officially forming their alliance. Sometime later, they returned to the Eternal Lotuses headquarters. Make sure to visit us again soon, brother. And I don't mean next year. Yuro said to him at the front gate. I know. I'll visit you again next month before our faction war with the Fiery Garden of Hell. Also, I'll be activating the formation to limit our cultivation soon, so don't be alarmed when your cultivation is suddenly suppressed. Okay. Huh? What are you talking about? Wang Bingbing and the others looked at him with puzzled faces. I'll explain it on the way back. Sometime later, they left the Eternal Lotuses' residence and made their way back to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. What? You're going to limit everyone's cultivation to peak spirit Grandmaster? Shi Lang exclaimed in a shocked voice after learning of his plan. Heavens, you can do something like that? Wang Bingbing was shocked for another reason. As crazy as it sounds, I actually support it. Humans are capable of ridiculous things, much less cultivators. Wu Zhao said. Mei Feng nodded. I was actually going to bring this matter up sooner or later. I'm glad you're way ahead of me in this regard. The last thing we need are crazy cultivators changing terrains for whatever reason. Yuan then said, I'll explain this in more detail once we return and everyone is present. Chapter 1489 Divine Supremes. Chapter 1489 Divine Supremes 1489 Divine Supremes. When they returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, Yuan went to see the Lord's condition while everyone else went back to the mansion. Upon seeing the Lord, Yuan was relieved to notice a significant improvement in his condition. The Lord's eyes shone with renewed clarity, his red fur now vibrant with life. Welcome back, Yuan. The Lord greeted him with a smile. You look much better. Yes, and it's all thanks to you and Ji-Ran. Yuan looked at the starry abyss resting not far away with a smile. He must be utterly exhausted if he hasn't even noticed our return, Yuan muttered in a low voice. That's the downside to being just a soul without its body. While cultivators at his level don't require a dantian to contain spiritual energy, the amount of energy he can store inside his soul is much more limited. Also, even if they regain their physical body, they'll need to rebuild it from scratch. Yuning could be heard sighing when she heard the Lord's words, which reminded her of the sad reality. However, even if she had to rebuild her body from scratch, it was better than having her soul slowly rotting away in the shadow realm. The spiritual energy in this world is too weak to recover Ji-Ran's exhausted energy, so you'll have to let him do it within the 9 heavens. The Lord said a moment later. Yuan nodded and retrieved the starry abyss. By the way, the Lord lifted his head to gaze at the sky and smiled. You are responsible for that formation, correct? Yes. I am going to suppress everyone's cultivation base. Do you object to my method? Yuan asked. You're doing it to protect this world, no? I am. Then why would I object? Although I am preserving this world, I am not doing it purely out of my love for humans. Indeed, I love them, but I also despise them at the same time. The Lord sighed with a heavy breath. He continued, humans possess an innate greed, willing to resort to heinous acts in pursuit of power. Their hunger for control is insatiable, and even a fleeting taste of power can drive them to madness. Of course, I fully understand that not every human is a power-hungry beast, but it only takes one to inflict irreparable damage and ruin everything for the rest. If you hadn't acted, I would have created the formation myself sooner or later. Why do you think the 9 heavens operate the way it does? The lower heavens would have collapsed long ago if immortals were allowed to dwell there. Yuan smiled at his words and asked out of curiosity, Lord. I have been wondering this for a while, but why are you sacrificing your own life for this world? I mean, I am aware that you'd still perish with this world if it were to collapse, but wouldn't that be better than slowly suffering as this world's protector? Hearing his question, the Lord lifted his head to gaze at the sky with a calm yet emotional gaze. As the descendant of the immortal monarch, you deserve to know. This world, before it was separated from the 9 heavens, was the birthplace of the immortal monarch, and my father was one of the 9 divine supremes. The 9 divine supremes are the divine beasts that were directly under the immortal monarch. They were all supreme beings at the peak of their respective bloodline, each capable of rivaling the entire world. My father, who was known as the Crimson Terror, used to be a walking calamity who hunted and consumed humans on a daily basis. However, he changed after being humbled by the immortal monarch and grew to love humans. The Crimson Terror, huh? After hearing this name, a vague image appeared inside Yuan's head, but no matter how much he tried to remember, he could not get a clear image. So you're doing this for your father? I am doing this for my father and the immortal monarch. If it weren't for the immortal monarch, humans would have never stopped hunting our race. The same could be said for the other races since it was the immortal monarch who united the human race and beasts. Yuan stared at the Lord with a silent gaze, seemingly pondering something. After a brief moment of silence, he smiled warmly and expressed, I'm at a loss for words to convey my gratitude to you, Lord. I don't deserve your gratitude since I am not doing this for you, Lord said with a calm smile. However, that smile immediately froze when he heard Yuan's next words. No, you did. I have the immortal monarch bloodline not because I am his descendant but because I am the immortal monarch himself. You, what, huh? The Lord's eyes widened with immense shock. Seeing his bewildered face, Yuan repeated, I am the immortal monarch, his reincarnation, to be precise. Unfortunately, I do not have all of my memories, but I am slowly regaining them. Thud. The Lord fell to his knees, his face filled with disbelief. Is this real? Or am I dreaming? He murmured in a bewildered tone, struggling to comprehend the surreal turn of events. Yuan nodded and spoke, my name was Tian-Yi. The first to follow me was dragon goddess Yao, followed by the primordial phoenix, Feng Yuming. My third companion was the eater of stars, Xingrui. Regrettably, this is the extent of my memories. The Lord's entire being trembled, and he muttered, while dragon goddess Yao and primordial phoenix Feng Yuming are renowned figures, the eater of stars, on the other hand, was shrouded in mysteries. Besides the 9 divine supremes and the immortal monarch himself, nobody knew her real name. I no longer have any doubt about your identity. The Lord lowered his body until even his forehead was kissing the ground. Immortal monarch, ruler of the 9 divine supremes and savior of 100 bloodlines, this lowly one welcomes you home. He exclaimed in profound reverence. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1481 Tantrum. Chapter 1481 Tantrum 1481 Tantrum Immortal Monarch. Who is that? Yuning raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner, as she had never heard of this individual before. Since the immortal monarch came into existence way after the heavenly war of immortals and gods, there was simply no way for those within the shadow realm to know of him. Despite the occasional tales of the divine heaven splitting into the 9 heavens being told by those who ventured into the shadow realm throughout the years, the immortal monarch's name never found its way into these discussions, leaving a void of knowledge in the shadow realm. With that being said, there were names that Yuan uttered that sounded familiar to Yuning. Dragon goddess Yao, primordial phoenix, and even the eater of stars? Weren't they godlike entities revered as the pinnacle of the beast race? Even in her era, These names were tantamount to deities beyond human comprehension, especially the Eater of Stars, who was viewed as a calamity or god of destruction. Yuan is the reincarnation of this immortal monarch who ruled over such powerful entities. Heavens! This explains why his entire existence is so heaven-defying. Yuning clenched her fists from excitement at the realization that she had been picked up by such a powerful individual. Please, stand up. Yuan beckoned the Lord. Yes. The Lord immediately stood up, but his head remained lowered, staring at the ground. There's no need to act in such a manner, Lord. I may be the immortal monarch, but you're still this world's savior. If anything, I should be the one lowering my head to you. Please don't do that, Your Majesty. Only if you stop calling me that, but you're the Emperor of Beasts, that was before my death. I am merely Yuan now, a human living on Earth. Just address me as that. If you say so, Yuan. Despite being accustomed to addressing him as such, it now felt profoundly uncomfortable for the Lord, knowing Yuan's true identity as the immortal monarch. If you don't mind me asking, how did you perish as the immortal monarch? And what happened to the 9 divine supremes? The Lord suddenly asked. Yuan shook his head and said, Unfortunately, I do not know. The Lord fell silent with a pondering expression on his face. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a grim tone. The destruction of the divine heaven and the immortal monarch's disappearance coincided. This cannot be a mere coincidence. I am convinced the immortal monarch played a role in it, which led to his demise. Upon hearing this, Yuan responded, Actually, though I am uncertain of the whereabouts of all the 9 divine supremes, I can confirm the location of dragon goddess Xiaoxiao. In fact, she is with me at this very moment. What? Where is she? The Lord's entire body tensed up after learning of this shocking information. Yuan retrieved the dragon's soul and showed it to him. She's in here, her soul, at least. What? The Lord stared at the dragon's soul with a dazed face. To reduce dragon goddess Xiaoxiao, who was the strongest among the 9 divine supremes, to such a state, what unfathomable events could have led to such a tragedy? He muttered in a trembling voice. You can ask her, but she will not respond no matter how many times I try to speak with her, Yuan shrugged. That usually happens when you upset her in some way. The Lord explained. Huh. I don't remember doing anything that could upset her. But to think her reason for not responding was due to a tantrum. I guess she can be quite childish, too. Yuan chuckled. However, the Lord did not find his words funny. In fact, he wore a terrified expression on his face and even distanced himself. The very next moment, the dragon's soul in Yuan's grasp suddenly began to tremble violently, and an unfathomably powerful pressure that threatened every existence on Earth appeared. This sudden turn of events shocked Yuan, who quickly exclaimed, What's happening? Why you angered the dragon goddess by calling her childish? The Lord responded in a screaming voice. What? Yuan exclaimed. He immediately turned to look at the dragon's soul with a bittersweet smile and apologized, I'm sorry, dragon goddess Xiaoxiao, for calling you childish. Yet, the dragon's soul began trembling even more viciously for some reason. Even though I apologized. Although dragon goddess Xiaoxiao did not utter a single word, the Lord could somehow understand the reason for her frustration, but he wasn't sure whether he should reveal this information to Yuan, fearing it would anger her even further. Yet, if he remained silent, the earth would be imperiled, facing the looming threat of destruction. Why Yuan, just as the Lord parted his lips to speak, he felt a sharp aura materialize before his throat. It was dragon goddess Yu's silent command to maintain silence, and he complied without hesitation. I'm sorry, but you'll have to figure this out on your own, the Lord sighed inwardly. Dragon goddess Xiaoxiao, why can't you just tell me what's bothering you? I'm sure you know this already, but I do not have all of my memories as the immortal monarch, so I cannot respond to you the way you probably want me to. Surprisingly, the dragon's soul began to calm down. Seeing this, Yuan quickly continued, I am sorry, but I will definitely make it up to you when I remember. The dragon's soul stopped shaking, and the terrorizing pressure also disappeared. Yuan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and sighed inwardly. She's more handful than what I currently remember. Sometime later, Yuan said to the Lord, anyway, I will activate the formation once I warn the others. Of course, I won't restrict you or Leah's cultivation base. I will support your decision no matter what you want to do. Then I'll return once I replenish Ji Ran's cultivation base. Yuan recalled the starry abyss and descended down the mountain, returning to the mansion shortly after. Chapter 1482 Powerful Presences. Chapter 1482 Powerful Presences. 1482 Powerful Presences. Upon returning home, Yuan was greeted by Mei Feng at the door, who said, the others have come out of and are waiting for you in the dining room. Okay. They went to the dining room together, where everyone was gathered and chatting merrily. Ha ha ha. You should have been there. We had to fight 40,000 players with just the 4 of us. Shi Lang laughed out loud. Damn it. Why did I have to come out of a day late? I can't believe that I missed out on our debut. Wang Ming cursed as he slammed the table with his fist and a regretful look on his face. It was not just Wang Ming. Everyone who missed out on the faction war wore a disappointed expression on their faces. Don't be too upset. You'll have plenty of chances to participate in the future. Yuan said as he entered the room. Yuan. He took a seat and continued, we have another faction war with the Fiery Garden of Hell in about a month, but I plan on participating in this alone. Why? Let's just say I want to teach Fiery Queen a lesson, and it would be less effective if everyone were there. If you really want to participate in a faction war, we can simply challenge another faction after that one. Anyway, I have an important announcement that will affect all of us and surely cause an uproar around the world for some time, Yuan suddenly declared, his expression solemn. Everyone in the room immediately fell silent, a sense of nervousness hanging in the air. Due to the system update that allowed people on Earth to acquire treasures and whatnot from the 9 heavens, our economy and overall power balance has become chaotic, to say the least. Many cultivators saw a significant boost in their cultivation because of this. Normally, this would be celebrated, but unfortunately, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Earth is simply too small and frankly not ready to have so many powerful cultivators running around. While the number of cultivators who can destroy this world is still small and our cultivation world isn't as developed, I am going to restrict everyone's cultivation to peak Spirit Grandmaster, just like how the 9 heavens have certain cultivation restrictions for each world. This is a selfish act that some may even call oppressive and tyrannical, but I refuse to risk this world being destroyed by a single bad apple. Any questions? Hong Xiuquan raised his hand and asked, does this apply to us, as well? I'm pretty sure nobody here would do anything that would put the world at risk. Yuan nodded, I can also confidently say that nobody here would do such a thing, but I cannot show any favoritism, as that would be unfair to others. Moreover, if everyone in the world except for those around me had their cultivation suppressed, it would definitely raise eyebrows. So you don't plan on letting the world know you're behind the restriction? Shi Murong asked. No, I do not. Well, I don't have any objections or complaints. Luckily, I didn't get ahead of myself, or I would have wasted a lot of resources increasing my cultivation base past Spirit Grandmaster. Wang Xiuying chuckled. I guess we won't have to worry about our cultivation on Earth after reaching the peak of Spirit Grandmaster anymore. This is great news for me since I can focus on cultivation online now, said Chu Liuxiang. Right? It's exhausting cultivating 2 bodies at once, Wang Bingbing sighed out loud. When are you going to suppress our cultivation? Li Jinxi asked. Later today. Okay. Sometime later, after the conversation regarding the formation ended, Yuan notified the others about their interview. I thought you guys would like some recognition, so I agreed to an interview for the members of our faction. I'll contact the interviewer after this, so it'll be great if you can stay on Earth for a few days. Of course, if you're busy or don't wish to participate, I won't force you. An interview, huh? I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner. Chu Liuxiang said. Who's the interviewer? Mei Xiu asked. Wu Zhao suddenly stood up and announced, "That would be the idol, Xiaoxiao." "Who?" Several voices could be heard at the same time. "What, none of you know Xiaoxiao? She's the #1 idol." Wu Zhao looked at them with clear disbelief on his shocked face. "Omicron M, so you were into that kind of stuff, huh? How surprising." Hong Xiuqian chuckled. "I don't care who it is as long as they're not someone suspicious or have any ulterior motives." Li Jinxi said. "There's no way she's someone like that. I can vouch for her," Wu Zhao said as he patted his chest confidently. Everyone in the room looked at him with weird faces. Sometime later, Yuan left the mansion to prepare for the formation's activation. "Yuan, no, young master, before you activate the formation, should let you know that its effect is limited to those below spirit enlightenment. If someone were to achieve that level, it would no longer suppress their cultivation. This is due to your lack of cultivation base, as I was only able to create an inferior formation with my given resources. With that being said, I can improve it in the future once you increase your cultivation base." Yuan nodded, "Okay. Also, there's another matter you should be aware of. When I searched this world with my divine sense, I was able to detect several powerful presences with a cultivation that already surpasses spirit enlightenment hidden around the world. I believe they're all divine beasts." "Is that so? I always expected this world to have a few of them, so this just confirms my suspicions. Since they have dwelled in this world for so long without causing any trouble, I don't need to worry about them causing any trouble for Earth for now. However, I would like to visit them soon," Yuan muttered as he stared at the horizon with a pondering expression on his face. Chapter 1483 Flashbacks. Chapter 1483 Flashbacks 1483 Flashbacks, then I'll activate the formation now. Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. A moment later, he opened his eyes with a resolute expression and activated the formation. Immediately after the formation's activation, a profound pressure engulfed the entire world. This pressure made cultivators feel uneasy, their instincts sensing something dreadful. Meanwhile, mortals who did not cultivate remained blissfully unaware, feeling nothing at all. As the creator of this formation, Yuan wasn't affected by its effects. However, cultivators around the world sensed a change within their bodies, more specifically, in their dantian. It was an indescribable sensation, almost as if an invisible force had taken hold of it. Those below the peak of Spirit Grandmaster were unaware of the formation's effects, as it did not impact them. However, those above Spirit Grandmaster were struck with a paralyzing shock, their faces contorted with terror, when their cultivation was suddenly suppressed to the level of Spirit Grandmaster. Around 50 cultivators around the world have achieved Spirit Lord, and all of them had their cultivation lowered simultaneously. What the fuck? What happened to my cultivation? Did someone poison me? Why did my cultivation suddenly regress? These Spirit Lords frantically began trying to figure out what had caused their cultivation base to decline, but it would be some time before they realized the truth. Since there were so few of them, and the concept of a formation capable of restricting everyone's cultivation base was simply ludicrous, it was practically impossible for them to comprehend the situation for the time being. It's done. Yuan sighed after activating the formation. The people won't figure out the cause of the restriction, but they will eventually realize that their cultivation is being restricted. Yuning then said, while the formation forcefully suppresses their cultivation, it won't stop them from increasing their cultivation. So while they can become a Spirit Lord, their cultivation will be suppressed to remain at Spirit Grandmaster until they surpass Spirit Enlightenment, which will probably take decades. Yuan returned to the mansion shortly after and contacted Xiaoxiao. "Hello, this is Yuan. This is regarding the interview." "Yes, will be available for the next few days. I'll be there tomorrow morning," Xiaoxiao declared, her voice shivering from excitement. "Then I'll see you tomorrow. Good night." After hanging up, Yuan returned to his room. Inside, Chu Shijian was waiting for him. However, instead of beckoning him from the bed as usual, she sat on the balcony, staring at the dark sky with a profound expression on her beautiful face. Lulu? Yuan called out to her. She turned to look at him with a gentle smile and asked, "Do you have a moment?" "Of course." "What's wrong?" He sat right beside her. After fidgeting around for a bit, clearly nervous about it, she spoke. "I might sound crazy for saying this, but you see, I have been having these weird dreams lately." "Dreams?" Yuan raised an eyebrow. "Actually, not dreams. They're more like flashbacks of memories that do not belong to me. It would typically occur when I am deeply immersed in my cultivation." "When did you start having these flashbacks?" Yuan asked. "Shortly after you gave me this ring." Chu Shijian retrieved Huang Shaoli's spatial ring and showed it to him. "Even though I don't recognize any of these memories, they feel awfully familiar and realistic, almost like I'd actually experienced it before." "Huang Shaoli." Yuan suddenly muttered. "Huh?" Chu Luxiang's eyes widened with surprise after hearing this name come out of his mouth. "Omicron-MT, that's a name that frequently comes up in my flashbacks." "How do you know such a thing?" Yuan smiled and said, "I don't want to spoil the fun, so I won't say anything. However, these flashbacks are real memories." "Real memories?" Chu Liuxiang looked at the ring and muttered, "Could these memories have belonged to the previous owner of this ring?" "Something like that." "Then can I ask why you gave this ring to me?" "You said it belongs to me, but I don't get it." "You will in due time." Chu Liuxiang puffed her cheeks and said, "You're teasing me." Yuan chuckled, "Is this the cause of your worries?" "Basically. I thought I was possessed by a ghost or something." "Don't worry, you're not cursed or possessed." Chu Liuxiang stood up and suddenly grabbed Yuan's hand. "It's been a while since we've been together like this. Let's have some fun." She quickly dragged him to the bed. When Yuning saw this and realized what they were about to do, she immediately sealed her divine sense to respect their privacy. "So he already has a partner," she sighed inwardly. Several hours later, while Chu Liuxiang slept beside him with a satisfied and peaceful face, Yuan stared at the ceiling with a pondering expression. So she's slowly regaining her memories as Huang Shaoli. Does this mean Li Jinxi is also regaining her memories as Jinxi? He wondered inwardly. Before the sun fully rose, Yuan left his room while Chu Liuxiang continued to sleep peacefully. "Good morning, young master." Mei Feng greeted him in the hallway as she mopped the floor. "You're up early." "I always wake up this early," she calmly said. "Yan Xiaoxiao should be arriving soon. I'll do some warm-up on the training grounds. Can you call me when she arrives?" "Certainly." When he arrived at the training ground, he could see that someone had arrived before him, and she was swinging a large sword twice her size around like it was a feather. Upon noticing Yuan's presence, Li Jinxi stopped her training to look at him. "It's been a while. Spar with me," she immediately said to him. "Sure." As Yuan approached her, Li Jinxi stored away her large sword and retrieved a different sword. "That's..." Yuan did not expect Li Jinxi to pull out the Golden Empress suddenly. "You're going to spar with that?" He chuckled. "You can't handle it?" In response to her words, Yuan retrieved the Empyrean Overlord. "I see that you've gotten better at provoking me, but let's see if anything else has improved." Chapter 1484 Jin Shi's Influence. Chapter 1484 Jin Zai's Influence. 1484 Jin Zai's Influence. Shortly after Yuan and Li Jinxi began sparring with each other in the training grounds, Yan Xiaoxiao arrived at the Dragon Spiral Mountain's entrance gate. She approached the gate with an excited smile on her face. "Hello. I have an appointment with the Demon's Sealing faction," she said to the guards there. "You must be Lady Yan Xiaoxiao. We have been expecting your arrival." The guards treated her with respect. Typically, only those living at the top of the Dragon Spiral Mountain are allowed to have guests without needing Leah's approval. However, the Lord made it very clear that Yuan could use the Dragon Spiral Mountain as he pleased. Please wait here while we contact the Demon Sealing faction. One of the guards went to contact Mei Feng, who was appointed as their manager. Xiaoxiao nodded and turned to look at the majestic scenery before her. So this is the famous Dragon Spiral Mountain, huh? I have been trying to get a house in this place for a while, but I keep getting rejected even with my status, she sighed inwardly. The spiritual energy within the Dragon Spiral Mountain could be considered the best in the world, so many people have applied to become its residents since cultivation became the norm. Unfortunately, everyone who applied after Yuan was rejected, meaning Yuan and his group were the last people to settle in the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Sometime later, Mei Feng arrived at the gate while driving a red motorcycle. I'm here to bring you to our residence, she said as she beckoned for Xiaoxiao to sit behind her. We're going there on that. Xiaoxiao wasn't expecting such an exciting ride on her way up. But she had no complaints, so she quickly took her seat and enjoyed her ride up the mountain. Mei Feng ascended the mountain without slowing down even slightly, clearly very experienced with this routine. Do you accept guests often? Xiaoxiao decided to ask. No, you're our first guest. Really? I feel very honored. They arrived at the Demon Sealing faction's residence shortly after. By the way, where is your equipment for the interview? Mei Feng asked her, who appeared empty-handed. Oh, it's all in here. Xiaoxiao pointed to the spatial ring on her finger. Spatial rings and storage pouches became extremely popular on Earth after the system update, as they allowed everyone to carry heavy loads with convenience. However, due to their high price it was a luxury item only for the wealthy. That is very convenient. I should get one, too. Mei Feng muttered to herself. Dong. The entire mountain suddenly shook, startling Xiaoxiao. What was that? An earthquake? Mei Feng turned to look in the direction of their training ground and sighed. Can't they be considerate to our neighbors? We've been getting a lot of complaints lately. She turned to look at Xiaoxiao and explained, Don't worry, there's no need to be alarmed. It's caused by the young master's sparring session. Xiaoxiao's eyes flickered with excitement upon learning this information. Player Yuan's sparring session? Can we take a look? Please? Sure. By the time they arrived at the training ground, the Dragon Spiral Mountain had shaken several more times. When they finally arrived at the training ground, Xiaoxiao was left speechless by the devastation that had been wrought. The ground was riddled with craters and large sections had been completely leveled. Are you sure they're only sparring? She asked in a trembling voice. Even Mei Feng was shocked by the damage done to the land there. Manager Leah won't be happy when she sees this. Mei Feng rubbed her eyes as she sighed. After taking a deep breath, she shouted loudly, Young master. You'll destroy this entire mountain at this rate. Upon hearing her words, Yuan, who had been fully absorbed in his sparring with Li Jinsi, snapped out of his intense focus. When he saw the destruction they had caused, he immediately began sweating. However, Li Jinsi remained completely immersed in their fight, oblivious to Yuan's pause, and continued to pounce at him with relentless fervor. Seeing this, Yuan used Heavenly Domain to restrict her movements completely without causing any damage to their surroundings. Yet, Li Jinsi was not completely suppressed and still managed to walk toward him slowly. Oh. Yuan was impressed by Li Jinsi's effort and shocking progress. Unfortunately, if we continue any further, we might really destroy this mountain. Jinsi, it's about time you snap out of it. Yuan activated Dragon's Gaze the next moment, shaking Li Jinsi's soul directly. Thud. Li Jinsi immediately collapsed on the ground. No matter how strong her body was, her soul was still prone to spiritual attacks. However, she quickly recovered and woke up a few seconds later. Ugh, what just happened? She slowly got back to her feet, looking confused. Are you finally awake? Look around you. Yuan said to her. This is. Li Jinsi swallowed nervously after seeing the destroyed training ground. She can already imagine being punished by Leah for this. Ah. What the hell happened to the training ground? Another voice resounded the very next moment. Yuan turned to look at one of the balconies, where Wang Ming stood with a terrified look on his face. Sorry, we got carried away during our spar, Yuan explained with an apologetic smile. More and more of the demon sealing faction members started appearing on their balcony to see what the commotion was about. Oh my god. Senior Leah will tear us to shreds once she sees this. Shi Lang was on the verge of tears. Don't worry. I will speak with her and bear all responsibility, Yuan said with a guilty smile. He turned to look at Li Jinsi and continued, I am very impressed by your improvements, Jinsi. You must have been training very hard. Thank you. Despite his words, Yuan couldn't help but notice the drastic change in her movements and fighting style. It felt as if he were facing an entirely different person. It must be Jean Zai's influence. Is she aware, or? Yuan wondered inwardly. Chapter 1485 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview. Chapter 1485 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview 1485 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview. Sometime after Yuan ended his sparring session with Li Jinsi, he approached Yan Xiaoxiao, who was trembling from excitement. It's an honor to meet you finally, player Yuan, Yan Xiaoxiao loudly declared. Yuan smiled and said, but we already met during the faction war. And you can just call me Yuan. That doesn't count since I was working. You're not working now? No, this interview is for my own entertainment, so I am not doing it for work or anything like that. Yuan nodded, that's good. Then how would you like to do this interview? If you don't mind, I would like to get a glimpse into the daily life of every member of the demon sealing faction, so this will be a 3-day process. 4 days at most. Yan Xiaoxiao said. I don't mind, but I'm afraid you'll be disappointed by our daily life. We don't really do anything besides training and cultivating. That's completely fine. I'm sure that even a 10-second video of you walking in the hallway would be entertaining. Yuan chuckled, in that case, you should follow Mei Feng. She's the most active here. He turned to look at Mei Feng and asked, do you mind? No, I don't. Great. Then let's immediately start. Yan Xiaoxiao retrieved her camera, which was supported by an adjustable handheld rod, and began her filming. I am going to prepare breakfast for everyone now, Mei Feng said. Yuan nodded and said, Miss Yan, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask Mei Feng. Okay. And just call me Xiaoxiao, please. He nodded. Then I'll go speak with Leah. In fact, she's already making her way to us as we speak. He left the scene shortly after. Who is this Leah? Yan Xiaoxiao asked as she followed Mei Feng into the mansion. She's the manager of this dragon spiral mountain. So she gets to decide who gets to live on this mountain or not. I'm not sure about that. We can ask her later. While Yan Xiaoxiao filmed Mei Feng preparing breakfast for the demon sealing faction, Yuan watched Leah, who wore a stern expression on her face, approach their mansion. You! She shouted angrily. Do you have any idea what time it is? The sun is barely out, and you're already causing a ruckus, disturbing the entire mountain. My phone's blowing up with complaints because of you. Sorry, I got a little excited during a spar. It won't happen again. That's what you guys always say, but it keeps on happening. If not for the Lord, you guys would have been kicked out of this mountain ages ago. Really, it won't happen again. I'll create a formation around our place to contain any disturbance. It'll be like we don't even exist. Leah sucked her teeth in response. After a moment of silence, she spoke. Did you do something yesterday? What do you mean? Yuan raised an eyebrow. The Lord's been giggling like a child non-stop since I returned last night. Omicron that? I told him that I was the immortal monarch's reincarnation. You what? Why are you surprised? It was bound to happen. What made you expose your secret so suddenly? Leah then asked. After everything he's done for this world, he deserves to know. I'm surprised you didn't tell him yourself. I was sure you'd tell him. What kind of person do you think I am? Leah stared at him with a deep frown on her beautiful face. The type to tell the Lord everything? Yuan answered truthfully. Humph. Then you don't know me at all. I'm willing to learn if you're willing to teach me, he said with a gentle smile. Leah's face slightly flushed after hearing his words. Whatever. I'm leaving. If I receive another complaint about this place after today, I will kick you out of this mountain, immortal monarch or not. Sorry for the trouble. After Leah left, Yuning said, Young master, do you need my help with the formation? I can also create a formation to restore the damages. He nodded. You're a lifesaver. Sometime later, Yuning took control of his body to create 2 formations. One formation isolated the demon sealing factions area from the rest of the mountain, essentially moving them to a different dimension without moving the actual place. As long as they were within this formation, they would not disturb the neighbors even if they sparred with their full strength. The second formation restored the destroyed training ground and will even automatically repair any future damages done to their land. I've said this before, but there are a lot of convenient formations out there. I should return to studying arrays soon. Yuan muttered afterward. Should I teach you? I don't want to sound boastful, but I was one of the best array masters in my time, Yuning said. Then I won't be humble and will take you up on your offer, Yuan responded. Meanwhile, inside the kitchen. Wow, you're really amazing, Madame Meifeng. You're cooking a whole feast by yourself, and you're making it look effortless. Do you do this every day for every meal? No, this is a special occasion. I usually cook only when requested since everyone has their own schedule, and most of them spend their time inside cultivation online. How long have you been a member of the Demon Sealing faction? It's almost been a year, I guess. Why did you decide to join the Demon Sealing faction? Well, I was already working for Yuan when he was still Yu Tian at the Yu family, and my daughter is here, too. Your daughter is also here, 10:18, yes. Her name's Meishou. Sometime later, the members of the Demon Sealing faction gathered in the dining room for breakfast. We seem to be missing one member. Yan Xiaoxiao quickly noticed this. That would be Chu Shijian. She typically sleeps until noon. Yuan explained. I can't believe she slept through that commotion this morning. I envy her ability to sleep so soundly. Wang Xiuying sighed. You should join us. I made your portion, too. Meifeng said to Yan Xiaoxiao. Thank you. Yan Xiaoxiao didn't hesitate to join them. After breakfast, Yan Xiaoxiao continued her interview with Meifeng. Chapter 1486 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 2. Chapter 1486 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 2. 1486 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 2. Miss Meifeng, what do you typically do on a daily basis? Yan Xiaoxiao asked as Meifeng cleaned the dishes. I have 2 primary roles in the Demon Sealing faction. First and foremost, I am a maid, so I deal with all the chores first. My second role is being the manager of the faction, so I am responsible for any requests or inquiries sent to the faction. My chores usually consist of preparing food, cleaning the hallways and rooms, and washing their clothes. It's really simple and barely requires any effort. For my duties as the manager of the faction, I check all of the emails and keep myself updated on all faction-related trends. With the rest of my spare time, I simply cultivate and train my techniques. What kind of weapon do you specialize in? Yan Xiaoxiao then asked. I am currently training with the spear mainly, but I am also trying out other weapons. What is your cultivation at right now? I have the lowest cultivation in our faction, being only at the 7th level of Spirit Master. In a few words, can you give me a description of your feelings for the Demon Sealing faction? Mei Feng showed a slight smile before responding. It's a small and peaceful place, one that I can truly call home. Thank you. Xiaoxiao continued to follow Mei Feng for another hour before moving to the next member. Can you give us a brief introduction about yourself? What kind of weapon do you use? I'm Shi Lang, and I came from the Jaded Garden. My primary weapon is the spear. Jaded Garden? I have never heard of this place before. Well, it's a very seclusive place. Why did you join the Demon's Sealing faction? When Yuan needed 10 people to create his faction, we decided to help him. We? Yes. 7 of us came from the same place. What is your relationship with Yuan? We're good friends and rivals at the same time. Of course, none of us actually think we will ever catch up to him, but nonetheless, it still motivates us to train harder. What do you typically do besides training? Nothing, really. If we're not training here, we're training in. Of course, there are special occasions like the recent faction war. Speaking of the faction war, you've done a great job defeating so many players by yourself. I could tell that you were holding back, but exactly how much were you holding back? This might sound like nonsense, but I was only using about 30% of my full strength. Only 30%? Yes, it would be bad if I accidentally hurt, or worse, killed one of them by accident. I may sound arrogant for saying this, but only very few people in this world can handle me at my full strength, and most of them live on this mountain. Xiaoxiao continued to ask several more questions, such as his hobbies and favorite food. Since the training ground had been fixed, Shi Lang proceeded to show off some of his skills for the interview. He used this opportunity to back up his previous claim that he only used 30% of his strength during the faction war. Heavens, how did they repair this place so quickly? Xiaoxiao muttered in a dazed voice when she saw the scene. There were already people sparring on the training ground, and they were all using most of their strength. Are you guys trying to destroy this place again so soon? Shi Lang called out to them. What, you haven't been notified? We won't disturb the neighbors or destroy this place even if we use all of our strength after Yuan created a formation around our place. Wang Ming said. To demonstrate, he swung his sword at the ground, creating a large slit in the ground. However, as though time was being reversed, the slit in the ground quickly returned to its original state, as if it was never damaged. That guy is really capable of everything, huh? Shi Lang chuckled. Hey, Shi Lang, let's spar. Wu Zhao suddenly approached him. Sure. Shi Lang didn't think much of it and agreed. I will go all out from the beginning. Don't say I didn't warn you. Wu Zhao said. Xiaoxiao backed away and stood in a safe distance as she filmed their sparring session. Wow, he wasn't joking when he said that he was only using 30% of his strength during the faction war. If he'd fought like this back then, he would have easily defeated 5,000, even half of the players from the fiery Locust swarm by himself. The same goes for the fan-wielding Wu Zhao. He was clearly holding back the majority of his strength during the faction war. Are the rest of the members like this, too? If that's the case, the Demon's Sealing faction is much stronger than anyone could have anticipated. Sometime later, after their spar ended with Wu Zhao being victorious, Xiaoxiao began her interview with Wu Zhao. It's always been my dream to meet you, Fairy Yan. Wu Zhao greeted her with a handsome smile. Hello. You are Wu Zhao, correct? Indeed, and I cannot be any happier knowing that Fairy Yan is aware of my insignificant existence. Stop being creepy, Wu Zhao. You're ruining the atmosphere. Someone from the training grounds suddenly shouted. Which bastard just said that? I dare you to say that to my face. Wu Zhao snapped his head in the direction of the voice. I said that. A beautiful figure approached him. Ugh. Wu Zhao made a weird expression when he identified the person approaching him as Li Jinsi. If you have a problem with that, how about a spar with me? And no problem. I have no problem at all. Wu Zhao cleared his throat and looked at Xiaoxiao, feeling incredibly awkward. Sorry, you had to witness that. Xiaoxiao nodded and proceeded to ask him, are you also from the Jaded Garden? Yes, I am. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1487 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 3. Chapter 1487 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 3. 1487 Yan Xiaoxiao's Interview, 3. I heard from Lang that your reason for joining the Demon's Sealing faction was because Yuan needed 10 members to create the faction, but what is keeping you here? Yan Xiaoxiao asked. That's simple. Although those who aren't by his side won't understand this, Yuan has this certain charm that beckons those around him to follow him. I am following him because I am intrigued by his very existence. I want to see his limit and what he'll achieve in the future. Of course, following him also has many benefits. That I cannot deny, Wuxia said with a calm expression. Although it was initially his family who ordered him to follow Yuan, he eventually chose to follow Yuan of his own accord after realizing how interesting Yuan's existence was. What are some of these benefits that you speak of? For one, we're all growing much faster than if Wed remained in the Jaded Garden. He also has access to an unfathomable amount of resources that would shock the world if revealed. Wuxia said, purposefully teasing those who will be watching this interview in the future. Despite Yuan's vast wealth and powerful resources, none of them from the Jaded Garden asked him for anything, nor do they have any intention of doing so in the future. They didn't follow Yuan for his resources, so they saw no reason to request any. Of course, if Yuan offered them resources on his own accord, they wouldn't refuse. How satisfied are you with your performance during the faction war? Yan Xiaoxiao asked a moment later. It was average, I guess. If I weren't so worried about hurting those weaklings, I would have wiped them all out by myself. Is that so? Then what do you typically do when you're not training? I surf the internet and watch music videos, mainly yours. Wuxia replied with a slightly bashful smile. Thank you for your support. Yan Xiaoxiao responded exactly how an idol would respond to a fan, with a beaming smile that could charm even heaven itself. Wuxia nearly had a heart attack and quickly said, while we're on this subject, would you mind giving me your autograph later? Of course. Sometime later, Yan Xiaoxiao approached Wang Bingbing for her interview. Hello. Can you tell me a little about yourself and your background? I am Wang Bingbing, and I came from the Jaded Garden with my younger brother. I wield the sword. This Jaded Garden is a seclusive place, correct? Are you sure it's okay to talk about it so openly? Many people will see this interview. Yan Xiaoxiao asked. It's fine. It used to be secluded because of certain circumstances, but we no longer need to hide ourselves, Wang Bingbing said. You joined the Demon's Sealing faction because Yuan needed 10 people to create the faction, correct? Do you plan on leaving anything soon? That is correct, but I do not have any plan to leave this place, nor do I want to. It's very fun living with everyone like one big family, and I learn a lot of things from those around me, especially Yuan. Don't be fooled by his innocent and young appearance. He may seem young, but he knows more than the elders at my family, and he's the strongest person I know. I see. What do you typically do when you're not training or playing Cultivation Online? I spend that time reading books, mostly martial arts novels. How far have you progressed in Cultivation Online? How does one evaluate their progress? Wang Bingbing asked. Your cultivation and current realm, I suppose. Oh, then I am at the peak of Spirit Grandmaster and currently within the second heaven. Huh? You're still at second heaven? I thought you would be with Yuan in the fourth heaven. We may be in the same faction, but we have our own adventure and path. I am a core disciple at a certain sect, so I cannot leave as I want. However, I will be leaving soon to ascend. The same goes for the others. I see. What do you think about Yuan as the faction's leader? Do you think there is anything he needs to improve? Wang Bingbing chuckled and said, even though he's the leader, he doesn't act like one, which is what I consider his biggest fault. Other than that, he's very reliable and caring. He might be a little sadistic during training at times, but it's not a bad thing since we're growing tremendously from it. Xiaoxiao moved on to the next member sometime later. Hello, my name is Wang Ming. You must be Wang Bingbing's younger brother. That's right. You weren't at the faction war, the Demons Sealing faction's debut. Why was that? Wang Ming sighed. I was inside Cultivation Online at that time, so were the others, so we didn't know about it until it had already ended. What about the next faction war? The Demons Sealing faction has declared war on the Fiery Garden of Hell. Will you be participating in that one? No, I won't. The others also won't be participating. Huh? Why is that? Because Yuan wants to deal with them alone. Wang Ming casually shrugged. Seriously? Xiaoxiao's eyes widened with surprise at this information. Yup. And you believe he'll be able to do that alone? The Fiery Garden of Hell has over 500,000 members. That's over 10 times what the Fiery Locust Swarm has. I believe nothing is impossible for Yuan. Numbers and talents are meaningless before him. If I had to describe him with one word, it'd be monster. And what do you think about Yuan as a leader? Wang Ming pondered for a moment before responding. He doesn't behave like a leader, but he's definitely qualified as one and a good leader, as everyone knows they can rely on him during times of need. If he says he'll do something, it will happen. And that is what's most important to me. I see. Xiaoxiao nodded and continued asking questions. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1488 Sudden Visit. Chapter 1488 Sudden Visit. 1488 Sudden Visit. After her interview with Wang Ming, Xiaoxiao took a break and ate lunch with the Demons Sealing faction. Just as Meifeng started serving the food, Chu Shijian appeared in the dining room. Oh. You must be our interviewer. Nice to meet you. Chu Shijian. Xiaoxiao looked at Chu Shijian with raised eyebrows. She hadn't really put any thought into it before, but after seeing Chu Luxiang's face, she found the name extremely familiar. Ah. I remember now. You're the Chu family's young lady. How are your parents? They've helped me plenty with my career. They also live on this mountain, right? I should give them a visit later. The Chu family. Chu Shijian made a weird expression after being reminded of them. It has been a while since she left the Chu family. She had been expecting their retaliation for some time now for crippling Chu Shijian, but to her surprise, they hadn't tried to do anything to Yuan or the Demons Sealing faction. Actually, I've left the Chu family due to some circumstances, and it's been a while since I left, so I don't know about their situation. She shook her head. Is that so? Despite her curiosity, Xiaoxiao refrained from questioning any further and stopped talking altogether. The Chu family, huh? Yuan sighed inwardly. I was still immature back then. Although they showed hostility toward me, it was mostly due to a misunderstanding. Due to my inability to settle things properly, Lulu had to leave her family on bad terms. Yuan wondered if he should also visit the Chu family again to see if he could rectify their bad relationship. Since the Chu family hadn't attempted to take revenge for that incident, it meant they were still redeemable. The Qi family, as well. I wonder how they're doing nowadays. Since Yuan had to figure out how to leave the Shadow Realm with his life intact, he wasn't in a hurry to return to. That spirit is definitely waiting for my return. Without heaven's supremacy, there was simply no way for him to defeat the sword spirit, even with his experience as the evil god. The sword spirit didn't leave the giant sword even once when attacked me. Perhaps she cannot separate from it because she's its spirit? In that case, I might be able to escape. Yuan spent the rest of the meal in silence, pondering ways to escape from the sword spirit and Vanishing Valley safely. After the meal, Xiaoxiao continued her interview with the members, starting with Shi Murong. Meanwhile, Yuan approached Chu Shijian and asked her, Lulu, I am thinking about giving the Chu family another visit. Do you want to come with me? Huh? Why? This is too sudden. After being reminded of their existence, I can't help but recall that incident. If I had handled things better, we might have been able to talk things out with your family. In the end, I crippled your father's cultivation because of a mere misunderstanding. Chu Shijian fell silent. A moment later, she sighed. Other than their decision to suddenly marry me into the Qin family, they've treated me like any ordinary parents would. My annoying siblings aside, my parents never hated me. Honestly, the way I left the Chu family had left a bitter taste in my mouth that would occasionally return every time I think about them, but what can we do at this point? I doubt we can rectify things after so much has happened. You won't know until you try. After another moment of silence, Chu Shijian nodded with a resolute expression. All right, let's give them a visit. I am also curious about how things ended up with the Qin family after that. When do you want to visit them? We can do it now since we have plenty of time. What about the interview? She'll be here for a few days, so we have time. Okay. I'll notify Meifeng of our plans first. Then I will wait for you out front. While Chu Shijian returned to her room to prepare, Yuan went to find Meifeng. You're going to meet the Chu family now? This is quite sudden. Omicron I know. Then I'll let Xiaoxiao know. Do you know when you'll be back? It shouldn't take too long. We should be back by tonight. Stay safe, Yuan. The Chu family has been facing some difficulties for some time now. Yuan raised an eyebrow at this information and asked, what kind of difficulties? I don't know the details, but their family head is constantly sick nowadays. Due to his frequent absence, they're being heavily pressured by their competitors, and their overall influence has fallen significantly. Their family head should be Chu Shijian, correct? Correct. Yuan had a feeling that this sickness was related to his cultivation being crippled. I understand. Thank you for the information, Meifeng. Sometime later, he met up with Chu Shijian outside their residence and made their way up the mountain together. As they walked, Yuan talked about the Chu family's troubles. To think the Chu family would be suffering in such a manner. I could have never imagined such a thing happening before. Chu Shijian sighed out loud after learning this information. She continued, this is probably the Qin family's doing, too. The Chu family have been fighting with the Qin family for decades, correct? Yuan asked. That's right. I don't know the details, but they've always been on bad terms with each other. Things were about to get out of hand, so the two families came together and made a decision to change things around before things got bloody. Marrying me into the Qin family would have resulted in said change, but alas, I don't know what happened to the Qin family after I left, but they must be upset, especially their eldest, who really fancied me back then, always sending me gifts and stuff. As they approached the Chu family's residence, Yuan could see a figure standing by the gates. Sebastian. Chu Shijian muttered in a low voice after seeing his familiar face. Chapter 1489 Chu Family's Downfall. Chapter 1489 Chu Family's Downfall 1489 Chu Family's Downfall. I doubt this is a coincidence, Yuan said after seeing Sebastian waiting by the gate. Oh, I called him right before leaving so they know we're visiting, Chu Shijian quickly explained. Should I not have done that? You did the right thing. I didn't have his contact information, so I wouldn't have been able to contact him even if I had wanted to. This is much better than hoping they accept us at the front gate. When they arrived, Sebastian bowed to them in a respectful manner. This humble servant greets the young lady and the young master. Would like to visit the Chu family. Would that be a problem? Yuan inquired. No, there is no problem at all. The master is expecting your arrival inside. Sebastian opened the gate and gestured for them to enter the vehicle parked right inside. Once they were seated, Sebastian drove the vehicle toward the mansion. The atmosphere inside the vehicle was awkward and silent. Chu Shijian looked like she wanted to speak but didn't know how to start the conversation. Seeing her fidgety movements, Sebastian broke the silence with a question, "Young lady, how have you been? I hope you've been living a healthy and happy life outside the Chu family." Chu Liuxiang nodded, "I've been doing great with Yuan and everyone at the Demon's Ceiling faction." "What about you, Sebastian?" "The same as usual, is what I would like to say, but without you there, I've been reassigned to be your brothers, the young master's butler." "Are they causing you any trouble?" "They can be a handful from time to time, but so were you, young lady." "Is that so?" The vehicle became silent again for another moment before Chu Liuxiang asked, "I heard the Chu family has been having troubles lately. Is it the Qin family's doing?" Sebastian didn't immediately respond this time and even looked hesitant. "I will find out the answer even if you don't tell me, you know." Chu Liuxiang gave him a slight push. Sebastian sighed and said, "The master told me to keep this a secret from you even if you asked, but because you had left the family, your marriage with the Qin family's eldest son had to be cancelled." Apparently, the Qin family had prepared a lot for the marriage and even announced it to many people, causing them to be humiliated. Since then, the Qin family has been coming at our Chu family like wild beasts. They're also receiving help from someone from the 10 great families, making them even more difficult to deal with. Even if the Qin family is supported by the 10 great families, there's no way the Chu family could have fallen so low so quickly. Sebastian shook his head and explained, "The Chu family has been declining even before we adopted you, young lady. It just wasn't apparent from the surface." Meanwhile, the Qin family continued to grow. Even without external help, they could have bankrupted us within a decade. This is why the masters agreed to marry you into the Qin family. They were essentially blackmailed into doing so. Of course, they were too prideful to tell you the truth. No way. Chu Liuxiang wore a look of disbelief on her face. She turned to look at Yuan, who silently sat beside her with a pondering expression on his face. "You don't need to feel guilty about it, young lady. Even if they were pressured to marry you off to the Qin family, they shouldn't have obeyed without any resistance, so the masters are still in the wrong." Chu Liuxiang lowered her head and sighed. Yuan then spoke, "Honestly, I expected the Chu family to take revenge for what I did. Why aren't they doing anything?" "There are 2 reasons. 1, we've been too busy dealing with the Qin family to even care about something like revenge. Secondly, the Qi family warned us never to touch you and to forget about taking revenge." "I see. Are you guys still in touch with the Qi family?" "No, they've been quite silent since the warning." Sometime later, they arrived at the Chu family's living quarters. "I will bring you to the master now," Sebastian said as he led them inside the building. As they walked through the hallways, Chu Liuxiang noticed how empty they were. When she was still living there, over a dozen housemaids constantly cleaned the building, but there hadn't been a single one since they entered it minutes ago. The windows and walls were dusty, and there was less furniture in the hallway, not to mention the artwork. Omicron Chu Liuxiang was shocked, to say the least, after seeing how far the Chu family had fallen in just a year. What on earth happened? To fall this much in so little time doesn't make any sense. She cried inwardly. They stopped in front of a certain closed room sometime later. Sebastian knocked on the door and said, "Master, Chu Liuxiang and Yuan have arrived." "Let them in," a weak voice responded a second later. Sebastian opened the for them and gestured for them to enter without entering the room himself. "I will stay out here," he said. Chu Liuxiang nodded and entered the room, followed by Yuan. "Father." Chu Luxiang's eyes widened with shock when she saw Chu Shijian's appearance. He was sitting on the bed with a pale complexion. His eyes, which once shone with pride and strength, now appeared dull and lifeless. He had also become very thin, resembling a sick patient. Compared to a year ago, he looked like an entirely different person. Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly at Chu Shijian's appearance. Even with his dantian crippled, it wouldn't account for such a drastic transformation. There had to be another reason for his sickly appearance. "I never thought you'd come back." Chu Shijian spoke with a bittersweet smile on his face. "I'm glad to see you looking healthy. Unfortunately, I have to greet you in such a pathetic state. Chu Liuxiang was utterly speechless. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1490 Chu Shijian. Chapter 1490 Chu Shijian 1490 Chu Shijian. Seeing Chu Shijian's state, Chu Liuxiang subconsciously turned to look at Yuan with a weird expression that seemed to ask if destroying his dantian had caused this. Chu Shijian saw right through Chu Liuxiang's worry and said, "This has nothing to do with him destroying my dantian. I was living healthy until recently, around the time had its system update. Do you have any idea what might have caused this?" Chu Liuxiang inquired. Chu Shijian shook his head and sighed. "I have spent a fortune on the best doctors in the world, but none of them were able to identify the cause of my sickness." Yuan stepped forward and said, "Let me inspect your body for a moment." Chu Shijian looked at him with slightly narrowed eyes and asked, Why have you come? If you're here just to mock me, what would I get from doing that? Just give me your hand." Yuan extended his own hand and beckoned. With nothing to lose, Chu Shijian offered his hand to Yuan for inspection. A few moments later, Yuan said, "You've been poisoned." "What?" Chu Liuxiang and Chu Shijian exclaimed in a shocked voice. How can you possibly tell when nobody else could?" Chu Shijian questioned, doubting his credibility. "I don't know the exact poison used, but it flows through your meridians and is slowly killing you. Unless you have sufficient cultivation, even the best doctors in the world wouldn't be able to detect it. It most likely came from since you became sick after the system update." "And no way." Chu Shijian wore a look of disbelief on his face. When could he have been poisoned? He could count the number of times he left his residence on one hand after his cultivation had been crippled. He also couldn't recall any opportunity for someone to have poisoned him after the system update. "Yuan, do you think the poison can be treated?" Chu Liuxiang asked him with a worried face. "Honestly, I don't know, but I know someone who might." Chu Liuxiang pondered who this person might be for a moment. Wang Xiuying. She's a pill expert who studied in the field of medicine. Yuan nodded. Yes, she might know something. "I'll call her over now." He retrieved his cell phone and called Wang Xiuying. "Hey, Xiuying, it's me. I have a quick question. Do you know anything about poison?" "Of course. Why do you ask? Can you come to the Chu family? Someone here has been poisoned, and I need your expertise." "Sure. I'll be there as soon as possible." "Thanks." He hung up and turned to look at Chu Shijian. Why are you helping me?" Chu Shijian asked before Yuan could even open his mouth to speak. "The same reason why I am visiting. I want to see if we can rectify our mistakes." "Mistakes?" Yuan nodded and continued, "I heard from the butler that it was the Qin family who pressured you into giving away Chu Liuxiang. Is that correct?" Chu Shijian's eyebrows twitched at his words, and cursed in a low voice, "That damned Sebastian. I specifically told him to keep it a secret. Why would you hide something as important as this from me?" Chu Liuxiang suddenly exclaimed. "Is your pride really worth that much? If you had told us the truth, we wouldn't have needed to fight." Unsure how to respond, Chu Shijian could only remain silent, his head lowered in a shameful manner. "Father. It's better to be late than never. Please tell us the truth. You still see me as your father, huh?" A bittersweet smile appeared on his face. After a moment of silence, he said, "Yes, it's true. It was the Qin family who approached us first. They suggested ending our feud through marriage. Of course, I refused at first. However, that's when they started threatening to bankrupt our businesses. I don't know if you're aware, but our Chu family has been declining long before we adopted you. The Qin family showed us solid proof of their current prowess and influence, and it was more than enough to force us out of business within a decade if nothing is done. To make matters worse, they managed to receive support from the 10 great families, from the Walker's family and Gu family. Walkers and Gu. Yuan narrowed his eyes upon hearing these two familiar names. Fiery Queen belongs to the Walkers family. As for the Gu family, why do I keep running into people with their surname? How many times have I encountered them by now? Are we destined to clash with each other constantly? Anyways, due to the pressure, I surrendered without even a fight, and I have been loathing myself for that ever since. This caused me great stress, to the point where I couldn't even think properly during your visit. Chu Shijian looked at Yuan. I was rash and irrational, which led to the misunderstanding of you killing Chu Luxiang's master and our fight. I know it's late, but I deeply apologize for that. Qi Feng explained the situation to me afterward. Yuan shook his head and said, I also hold some blame for that incident. I was still immature and hot-headed back then. If I had just explained the situation instead of being hell-bent on delivering justice, we could have ended it without fighting. If I were in your shoes, I would have probably done the same thing if I thought you'd killed someone important to me. Unfortunately, my head was too full of anger to think properly, and I'd even crippled your cultivation out of anger. Chu Shijian was speechless. He didn't think Yuan would actually apologize for his actions. Compared to his last visit, he's like an entirely different person, even the atmosphere around him is different. Chu Shijian could sense a dignified aura around Yuan, feeling almost as though he was before an exalted expert. As an apology, I will try to do something about your crippled dantian and help you restore your cultivation. Yuan suddenly said. What did you just say? My dantian can be healed? Chu Shijian didn't dare to believe his ears, his eyes wide with shock. Chapter 1491 Basilisk's Tear. Chapter 1491 Basilisk's Tear. 1491 Basilisk's Tear. Seeing Chu Shijian's doubtful face, Yuan nodded. Yes, it's possible. There are spiritual medicines and elixirs that can heal destroyed dantians. They're a little rare, but they definitely exist. If you can restore my cultivation, I will forever be grateful. I am ready to take responsibility and pay for the treasure. Chu Shijian hastily said, his voice filled with a newfound determination. Yuan raised an eyebrow and said, grateful? Even if I restored your cultivation, I am still responsible for destroying it in the first place. I also blamed you at first, but as I calmed down and realized my shortcomings, I came to realize that I also bore responsibility for my actions. I no longer blame you and consider it a punishment for my failure as a father. Chu Shijian sighed in a dejected manner. Yuan nodded and said, as for the payment, consider it already fully paid. Huh? What do you mean? You can consider it as an early betrothal gift, he calmly explained. Betrothal gift? Chu Liuxiang stared at him with wide eyes, her face filled with a mix of shock and anticipation. Yuan looked at her with a slight smile and asked, what, you want to remain as a mere girlfriend forever? Chu Luxiang's face flushed with redness after hearing his words. Although no words came out of her mouth, she shook her head in a bashful manner. If that's what you've decided, I will humbly accept it. Chu Shijian nodded in a dazed manner. Anyway, tell me about the Qin family. What have they been doing since the incident, and how have you been dealing with them? Yuan inquired a moment later. Well, they were definitely not happy when I told them that the marriage had to be delayed due to Chu Luxiang's sudden departure. Of course, I didn't reveal the fact that Shed left the family and only gave an excuse for her absence, hoping to delay our inevitable downfall. However, after a mere week or so, they somehow managed to find out the truth, including the fact that I'd lost my cultivation, which was a heavily guarded secret. Since then, they've been attacking our businesses relentlessly, especially our business within. Since our laws do not apply there, they've been going rampant in that world. Yuan pondered this information for a moment before asking, who knew your cultivation was crippled? Besides those who were there to witness it, all of my wives are aware of it. So there's a good chance that one of them has betrayed the Chu family, huh? What? No, I refuse to believe that my wives would betray me. It must have been the others. There were others who witnessed our fight. We can figure that sort of stuff later, after we deal with your poison, Yuan said as he answered his phone. You're outside? You can just fly inside. Okay, then I'll see you in a bit. After the call ended, Yuan went out of the room and notified Sebastian of their new guest. I understand. I will bring her to you. Sebastian didn't question him and immediately left to wait for Wang Xiuying's arrival outside their building. Sometime later, Wang Xiuying entered the room with Yuan and the others. She turned to look at Chu Shijian and said, "You must be the patient." Wang Xiuying didn't wait around and immediately went to inspect Chu Shijian's condition. Wang Xiuying hummed with her eyes closed. Chu Shijian swallowed nervously, and he anxiously waited for her diagnosis. A few moments later, Wang Xiuying released Chu Shijian's hand. How is my father? Chu Liuxiang asked. He's poisoned, all right. Do you know what caused it? And can you do something about it? Yuan asked. She nodded, yes, it should be the Basilisk's tear, an uncommon and effective poison that is hard to detect. Once consumed, the poison takes root within the person's dantian, slowly killing the person over time. This poison is only effective against mortals and those with low cultivation. While this poison can be easily dealt with in the 9 heavens, I doubt there are many people on Earth with the capabilities to diagnose it, much less cure it. Why, you can cure it, right? Chu Shijian asked in a trembling voice. Of course. Who do you think I am? Wang Xiuying puffed her chest in a prideful manner. Thank the heavens. Chu Shijian sighed deeply and even teared up after hearing her response. With that being said, I do not have the materials on me right now, so I have to return to Cultivation Online to concoct the antidote. It shouldn't take long, though. I can have it ready in a few hours. You can use our device to enter Cultivation Online to save some time. Chu Shijian said. Okay, let's do that. Sebastian was called into the room shortly after. Sebastian, prepare a room and a device for her to enter Cultivation Online. Chu Shijian instructed him. Yes, master. I'll watch over her. You can stay here and continue chatting with your father. Yuan said to Chu Liuxiang, who quietly nodded. Yuan left with Wang Xiuying and Sebastian, leaving Chu Liuxiang alone with Chu Shijian. It was incredibly awkward at first, with neither of them uttering a word for several minutes. Eventually, Chu Liuxiang spoke. I apologize for leaving the family in such a manner, father. However, I do not regret it. To live with Yuan like a family, I have been living my dream. Chu Shijian smiled and said, you do not need to apologize. If anything, I should be the one apologizing, for I have failed as a father. I placed our family's wealth and business over your well-being and happiness, hurting you in the process. You have chosen a fine partner, Liuxiang. I would smile and feel relieved whenever I saw Yuan being mentioned on the news. To think such a capable man is taking care of my daughter, I cannot be any happier. Father. Chu Liuxiang muttered, seemingly on the verge of tears, you're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.